Okay, so we have that pulled up right now. Chrissy can help you too, but when we get to your item, we'll switch from the scoreboard to that tab. Both tabs are open.
I think we just go straight into public hearing. I'll say good evening. Good evening. We're going to move into the public hearing portion of the meeting tonight.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing of the proposed conveyance of an interest in district real property per the lease agreements described terms for cell site locations at City and West High Schools and New Singular Wireless PSC LLC. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on February 15, 2018. Are there any comments from the board? Is there anyone from the audience that would like to advise or provide comments to the board on the proposed interest conveyance in district real property? I declare this public hearing closed. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2018 roof management project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 13, 2018. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on February 14, 2018. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. March 19, 2018 at the ICCSD physical plant located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on February 14, 2018. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? I declare this public hearing closed. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the West High School Phase 2 asbestos abatement project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on February 13, 2018. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on February 14, 2018. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. March 8, 2018 at the ICCSD physical plant located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on February 14, 2018. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public? I declare this public hearing closed.
Thank you, Lori. I will call this Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, February 27th, 2018 to order. My name is Janet Godwin, and I want to thank those in the audience, those watching on television, and those tracking us on Twitter for joining us tonight. I'll start by introducing those at the table with me. To my right, Superintendent Murley, Directors Ruthina Malone, Director Hemingway, Lori Rotlin, J.P. Clausen, Sean Eystone, Paul Ressler, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. I wanted to take just one moment to thank our school district and community for supporting the activism of our students as they express their views in the wake of the tragic shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School. I think civic knowledge and engagement is one of the most important things that our public schools can instill in our students, and I'm proud of our students, and I'm proud of our district for supporting political engagement and activism as a means of addressing some of our most difficult social ills. So with that, we'll move into our agenda for the evening and start with community comment. First up, we have SOD. Students Against Hate and Discrimination. I think a group of you are here to speak. Thank you.
If you don't mind, we're just going to move this podium out of the way.
Hi everyone, my name is Lou Jane. I'm a student at West High School. Yesterday at 4:55 p.m., we found out from the Press Citizen that our class for third trimester has been postponed, also canceled for this trimester. The class that we have been working so hard for was postponed without any communication with SOD, without any prior notification, none of that. We weren't given the decency of a week's notice. The Press Citizen article claimed that we didn't have enough students in the class. We were not aware that we needed a minimum requirement of students to make the class go, and we were not given a week's notice in advance to promote the class and get as many students as possible. Keep in mind, we were officially notified by the counselors of our schools in a brief message during 6th period today. Today is the last day to switch courses for third trimester. So students were not given an opportunity to change classes, to drop the class, to get a new class, because we found out 6th period. I think we've been very clear about being transparent with each other, right? And including us in the plans and the process of this class and all the discussions that you might have, but we were not given any notice, any heads up, nothing at all, which quite frankly was kind of rude, in my opinion. We decided to, in order to prove to you that this was not a case of lack of interest, we decided to petition the student body. In the school day alone, SOD members were able to get 56 students combined who are willing to take the class and 224 who support this. May I show you the petitions?
You may. Thank you.
Those are students' names, grades, ages, and schools and their emails. We believe that not notifying us ahead of time was very rude, like I said before, and I definitely believe that this class needs to continue. We have obviously shown you that there are enough people who are willing to take the class, because we've had 56 sign up today. Also, we have been so stressed with finals and midterms that I do not believe it is our job to promote the class, right? We get emails about an agriculture class every month. I believe that the school boards, the administration could have sent newsletters, could have sent letters in the mail, could have sent emails to all the parents and all the students in all the high schools about the class, could have recorded messages over the intercom, could have like I said, sent emails, advertising classes during AFT, but none of that was happened. All the weight was on us. And again, it is not our duty, it is not our responsibility to promote this class. You guys okayed this class. You guys got our hopes up, and you got us excited. And yesterday, we were devastated. I was devastated because over a year, we've been begging for this class since November of 2016. We've been waiting for over a year for this class. And yesterday, 2 days before the new trimester, you decide to cancel it last minute? I mean, honestly, how can all of you on this board today, the equity director and the director of curriculums, all of you look us in the eyes and tell us that we don't deserve this class? That all the work and the time that we've put in, all the sleepless nights, I've been getting about 4 hours of sleep every night for the past week. All the sleepless nights, all the tireless hours that we've put in, how can you tell us we do not deserve this class? How can you tell us this class is not something that needs to happen? We demand change. We demand change. And as Emma Gonzalez said, we call BS. We honestly call BS. You can do better. And shame on you. We deserve better.
In addition to that, it is not our job as people of color to educate and compensate for the ignorance of our peers. This mindset places a burden on the people of color to solve for their own oppression. In addition, learning about other people should not be an elective. And if this pilot class, if this is a pilot class, the numbers should not have to be overwhelming. However, if you want numbers, we've brought them to you, as Lujane has shown you guys.
First off, in November of 2016, as Lujane said, one of SOD's 8 original founding demands was the foundation of a year-long diversity course for schools in the ICCSD. The school board told us that that was not feasible, that it was not reasonable, that people would not take it, that they could not work it in, and frankly, both directly and indirectly told us that they did not have the time, did not have the will to even meet us halfway. So we fought, we came back, we kept attending these school board meetings. In April of 2017, we attended a work session with the school board where they had drafted 4 different potential ways to work our demand into the curriculum. Among them were infusing diversity and ethnic studies into our existing curriculum, a trimester elective, a class, and a scholar program. And after that work study, we agreed to doing a trimester elective in coordinates with those guidelines as a compromise. We never heard back, and we had to come back to you, the new school board, and air these burdens once again. Here we are, a year later, more than a year later, still asking for the same thing. You gave us the bare minimum and then took the bare minimum away. I'm pretty bad at math, but I'm pretty sure we're in negative territory now. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. We don't even have a trimester-long elective when we asked for a year-long required course. That isn't even to say that that existed until last night, and we were not notified until today, the majority of us. The students that had already signed up for this class are now being forced to either take on a study hall or fill that space with another elective. Not to mention that all of the people of color who had looked forward to being able to see themselves reflected in their school curriculum are having that snatched away from them. We don't understand why, we don't understand who, but we demand answers. I had to change my full schedule around in order to get this class because I thought that it would be worth it. So it is not a matter of a lack of student interest. As we have shown you, there is interest. It is there. We are only asking you all to meet us halfway. We're asking that you continue with this course. I don't think that would be so much of a leap considering it existed until last night, and I believe that if it can be taken away overnight, it can be reinstated overnight. I ask that you support us in asking that you keep this course, not create a course, but keep the course that existed until yesterday in place. Thank you.
As Mariam said, a lot of us spend time waiting to see ourselves reflected in school. I've been reading books and looking up people and frantically trying to find people who look like me for my entire life. And I was never able to find them in our mainstream school curricula. That was why I went looking. And I've only recently begun to see people like me, to see people of my race in my school curricula, and it was a great experience. It felt so validating, like suddenly I was part of a group who had been in history instead of only appearing the second that I was born. But it doesn't feel like it's often enough. I spend so much time wishing I could think more and talk more about my culture and about other people's cultures, because I know that other people who are underrepresented and have no space in traditional school curricula feel the same way that I do and have been looking like I have been. And so when I heard about this course, I was elated. I thought, finally, I would have a place to talk to other people about our cultures and the way that they interact with each other and the way that they interact with our world and our nation and our community. My race is a minority in this community, obviously. And especially if it's a small minority to begin with, and one has no way to connect with others outside of random chance meetings on the street, which are very chance. School is the only place that we can learn about each other's cultures and discuss them to the extent that they deserve. We don't get enough time for that. We need places We need safe spaces to discuss our cultures, to discuss others, to learn about each other, and to grow. Only education can foster empathy, and only empathy can foster equity. And we have no way of getting to any of that if we can't see ourselves in our school curricula. This was something that I was looking forward to. This was something I'd been dreaming about. And then all of a sudden, it was gone. Thank you.
My name is Maya Durham. I'm a young woman. I'm a young woman of color, and I'm a queer young woman of color. There are 5 other, to my knowledge, students in my school that share races with me. I am a young Indian American girl. And by that I mean subcontinent, not Native American. I have, like Mira said, I have never seen myself in my school's curriculum. The most we've learned about LGBT history is from the AIDS crisis, which doesn't exactly paint us in the most positive light. We learn about oppression. We do not learn about success. In regards to my race, like Mira said, the only time I've ever learned about myself was AP World History. I've learned more about myself in that class than I have in my entire life because there's such a tiny, isolated community in the east side of Iowa City. It's quite frankly appalling to me that I have worked my entire life to try and figure out who I am, and I've never been able to find that in a place that is supposed to educate us about not only ourselves but our peers. I have faced so many questions that I just don't know the answers to about my sexual orientation, about my race, about women's rights, that I have only been able to answer because of what I've learned from the internet and what I've learned from my mom. It's not acceptable that the one chance that we were going to have, that other young LGBT students were going to have, other young women of color were going to have to learn about themselves and their peers was taken away from us with no warning. Every day, we are fighting to try and make ourselves seen and try and make our issues heard. And as Mira said, education leads to empathy, empathy leads to equity. Where are we without any of those things? And without this class, we are one step behind. Lou Jane mentioned that we only learned about this class last night, and many of us only found out today. Our principals were notified by an article in the Press Citizen. A teacher told me today that when they mentioned it to the guidance office, they didn't know the class had been canceled. There are so many problems with what has happened in these last 2 days, taking away our right to an education about ourselves, our right to see ourselves represented, our right to having our identity heard, and our right to being involved in the process. It's not fair, it's not right, and it's so numbing to have all of those taken away in a matter of 24 hours. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wala Siddig, and I go to West High. Bringing up what Lou Jane said earlier, we were never included in this process, and that's highly unprofessional in my opinion. Transparency is essential, and it's what we've been asking for. You have not given us the courtesy of advance notice on what we've worked for, what we've worked for won't happen. Our demand was to be included in the process, and the process has not ended yet, so we still want to be included. Even the school administrators themselves did not find out until they got emails from us. And I just want to add that I dropped my aerospace engineering class in order to take this, because even though I want to be an engineer in the future, and I'm sure that class will be very helpful, I care more about learning about myself and learning about my history and my culture than I do about engineering, because it's my identity. Engineering sure will help me in the future, but this means way more to me than engineering and what I want to be in the future. It's who I am, and taking away this class without a notice, just taking away in general, is not fair because you're taking away my education, as Mira and Maya have said. And our right to an education is important, especially if it's my education about who I am and my history, because representation matters. Learning about people like me matters because it shows me what I can do. Learning about the good things that happened in Black history shows me that I can be like them, that I can be powerful. And taking away this class will not allow me that opportunity to learn about those, will not allow me the opportunity to learn about those instances. I barely learn about anything other than, sorry, let me rephrase it. In my other classes, the only thing I learn in regard to history is from the white man's point of view, and I am obviously not a white man. Teaching others about history should not just be exclusively from a white man's point of view. It needs to be inclusive of everybody and consider everyone else's identity and backgrounds. And that's exactly what this class was for me and for other students just like me and from different cultures and different backgrounds. And you have taken away that class, which is not allowing me to learn about myself. And especially since I just found out about it today, is just, I don't know what to call it. It's just highly unprofessional, and I really don't have any words for you right now because I'm just really sad that it's been taken away.
Hi, my name is Cecile Bandera, and I was really waiting for this class. I thought it was amazing. I was jumping up and down when I heard about it, when my friend Miriam told me about it. I rushed to the office to sign up for that class, and now it's gone. See, I don't know if you've ever been to an honors class or a class in City High, or AP or honors class. You are not going to see many people of color. You are not going to see black students or Hispanic students. You're going to see majority of them white students. I don't know, 2 or 1, in my geometry honors class, I am the only, I think maybe 1 female black student in my class. And I don't see anyone else. I don't see anyone else. I don't think you understand the power of representation. Oh my God, it's powerful. I don't see anyone. When I don't see that, people wonder why aren't black students, Hispanic students, minorities in AP classes, because we don't see anyone who look like us. How can those lessons that I'm taught, how can I feel them? How can I put them in my life when I don't see anyone who looks like me? I'm a young woman, I deserve that. It is not my job to educate people about myself, my people, and to educate their ignorance. That's not my job. They are teachers, and they don't do that. That is not my job. Every day in my class, last year, Black History Month is the only opportunity I got to learn about black people. I got to learn about myself. And I remember one time I had to stand up and talk to people, give them more information. I had to beg the teacher so I can get 3 minutes to talk about something more than slavery, than how people were oppressed. I had to ask for 3 minutes. I'm asking for a try-long class. You don't understand. I'm from Africa, and if you know anything about my country, when you see in Africa represented in America, it's that we're poor, or we don't have anything, or we're asking for 99 cents to save our lives. That's not true. That's not true at all. And this class was going to give me that opportunity. See, Lisa told me that they were going to give us a survey to ask us what we want to learn. I was going to learn about my history. I was going to learn about how great my people are. I was going to learn that. You understand? We were going to see Black Panther screening, I don't know, something like everybody gets to see Black Panther. Do you know how amazing that movie is? Do you know how amazing it would be for those people to see it? How people from Africa would love to see how beautiful we are and how advanced we are and how intelligent we are, amazing, intelligent Black women. Do you understand how important that is to me? No, you don't, because you took that class away from me. One try, 3 months. 1 try, 3 months. 4 years, and you decide to take 3 months. Like, you have many things. You can do better. You can do better. You can do better. I'm asking for 3 months. You can definitely do better.
My name is Nina Levezos-Stakopoulos, and I go to City High. And first off, I would like some clarification. Was it the school board or the school district that canceled this class? Or are you guys not going to answer?
I know you have rules and protocols in place, but we deserve answers. We have been waiting for so long, and we deserve answers, so we would like to know. Please answer our question. I know you have rules, but just out of respect.
If I get fined, I get fined. We got notified yesterday that it was canceled.
So it's the school district, okay.
We got notified by the an administrator for the district that it was being canceled due to low enrollment.
I'd just like to say, what?
Yeah, but Kingsley, why don't you?
I was the individual that sent that email to the board. I think there's a lot of questions that have been, brought up tonight. I would love to be as transparent as possible in regards to everything that has taken place in the last couple months, years, and especially in the last week to 2 weeks in regards to this process. I petitioned the board to know when that opportunity will present itself.
I just recently joined SOD, but I've heard that they have been we have been very involved in the process. And if you would have told them at that time how little people needed to be involved for this class to appear, they would have met that requirement. But this is a pilot class. It's not going to be perfect the first time. So you need to give it a shot. You need to give it a first try. And then next year, students will know about it. I had friends come up to me, excited, smiling, laughing about this class because they wanted to learn about their peers. They wanted to learn about their own ignorance and their own privileges and all of the stuff that they never get to talk about. I have heard that you guys spent $100,000 on a class about farming. I'm not 100% sure, but if money was a problem for this, I haven't heard anyone excited about that class. No one has come up to me about that. If anything, people have been slightly annoyed because personally, I don't think vocational classes are something that should be taught in the public school. But this is something that we need to know because if you don't know who you are, how do you know what you want to be? How could you know that? You need to understand yourself and your peers. And also, I would just like to mention that teachers have never, ever in my life assigned us an assignment, something that maybe we were even excited about, and then maybe the day before it was due, suddenly said, oh, that's not due, this extra credit isn't going to be taken at that short notice. But this is a class. This is a class that now people are going to have open periods for, and you can get punishments for having an open period if you haven't taken PE. There may be students who had this class and are not going to have it, and so when they're taking cross-country next year, they're going to have to take PE too, and let me tell you, that's exhausting. They don't want to do that because they were not prepared. You need to give a warning, some sort of notice, more than 24 hours. There are not always classes available that students are interested in, and this was something they were excited about. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Luma McCowie, and I'm a sophomore at West High. One thing that I think is important to mention is that there are little to no teachers of color, and that is very harmful to never see someone like yourself in a position of power and support. And that being said, we demand that you listen to us and keep our words in mind. Many of us were looking forward to this class, and we hope that you will help us reinstate this class. Many students have dropped classes, as Wallace said, and quit their jobs to make room for this class. That is why we require an answer by a clear and immediate answer by tonight. Thank you.
I have something to say real quick. I know you guys have rules, like I said, and protocols, and I've been to these things several times, so I know how they go. But I really need an answer, and I really need just an explanation of why. What was your, beyond the amount of students, right? Because if we had 20 students or 8 students, it would have been the same amount of money that was needed, right, for the class. So I just need to know, what was your reasoning behind it last minute, why we weren't involved. I quit my job, right? I quit my job because they weren't being flexible with me for this class because it's offered 6th period at West High, and other students have quit or have dropped engineering classes, so I just need an answer, and I know I haven't seen anything on the agenda, and I know you guys usually just go on what's on the agenda, but this needs to be on the agenda. Should be on the agenda, so please just I need an explanation, right now, tonight, today, something, because this is Thursday, right? And a lot of students were going to class on Thursday, and suddenly there's no class on Thursday, so I need an explanation or an answer or something from any of you.
Would Matt and Kingsley, would you guys be able to talk to them
I'd be more than happy to share all the information I have available about what's transpired over the last week, months, and years regarding this process.
When?
Please do.
Today, now.
I mean, I'm with you. I felt the same way. I don't have any idea why. It's a total surprise. We agreed as a board in a work session we were going to have this, and we got notified.
This is a surprise to you guys as well?
Yeah. Breaking open meetings laws by answering questions, but yeah, this is a total surprise.
We found out things in the Press Citizen as well.
Our principals,
Got an email.
they didn't find out until last night.
No, not this, but other things we have.
This we got an email.
We got notification.
Yeah, our principals found out late last night as well, or this morning, so they weren't even notified. Our counselors weren't notified until today. We just got brief emails from them at 6 period. So, like, why weren't we a part of the process? What went down? We need to know. I feel like we deserve to know.
So this is an awkward setting to have this conversation because I do think there's other individuals that aren't a part of this that I think frankly need to be a part of this conversation. I will address a couple of the issues that I've received via comments that involves to the board as well as yourselves as well. In regards to communication, I sent the email to the board. I don't have my email pulled up, but it was on Monday, I think Monday morning, if I remember correctly. I did not contact the Press Citizen. There was an email in my inbox that I didn't have enough time to get to until later on that evening, in which I responded to the Press Citizen at that time. I also sent an email out to principals as well at that time because, again, I had no other time to send that email out except to the board because we have a clear policy that we have to let our board know immediately right away before we let anybody else know, and so I followed that guideline. I sent Assad an email at probably 10:30, 10:47 at night. I have to check my email again, expressing my disappointment at this and willing to work out or trying to figure out another scenario or situation. In regards to, there's been questions as far as, I'll just be frank. Okay. There's some questions as far as compensation has been involved with this particular course. I can read something to you that I sent to President Godwin in relation to that. At our meeting, and this is a meeting I had with the instructor of the course on Friday, February 16th, I discussed with the instructor I needed a contract to go before the board, and this needed to be submitted by Wednesday so I could bring it to this board meeting and have it approved. I still do not have a contract in my hand as far as this particular course. Throughout this process, we have consistently discussed the rate of compensation to be at $2,500 per class. This was discussed at the Board Education Committee meeting on December 19th and given to the media as well. It's, you can Google that, and the information is in a press release by Amy Burrow from the Press Citizen. It came as a surprise at the tail end of our meeting on February 16th that the instructor was doubling the price of the agreement. I stated I would address a change with Director Schumacher and Assistant Superintendent Matt Degner and get back to the instructor on Monday or Tuesday. I called Assistant Superintendent Matt Degner upset right after that meeting, expressed my disappointment. He was on his way out of town, and I let him know a lot of different things about how important this class was and how I was disappointed there was a compensation battle at the last minute. There was some email correspondence that transpired between Assistant Superintendent Degner and Director Schumacher in relation to the course and whether or not we had the requisite number of students to even provide the course, especially at doubling the rate of the particular class. I sent an email on Tuesday, February 20th, that we would not be able to increase the amount. I'll be very frank with you. A lot of this particular budgeted amount was not a part of a budgeted item, as you know, because it happened during our conversations this year. Because of this, I was figuring out and factoring in the grant that we recently received, that I have $10,000 that I actually have talked about doing other things with, that to try to figure out how we could get this particular budgetary expense in this, just in case we're not able to fund it adequately. And so we really didn't have the money if it increased the price to that extent. So I sent this email out on Tuesday. We're able to increase the amount. I would need a contract by Wednesday, February 21st at noon. The instructor responded back to me that last Friday, February 23rd, at the end of the day, that this could not happen at $2,500 per class, but we would be able to do, the person would be able to do 5,000 and only teach one class. This conversation has been part of the preliminary discussion since October 2017. this conversation was a part of the, I mean, I'm not reading some of the other pieces of this email that I don't think are necessarily pertinent to the conversation. This factored into the decision why we ultimately decided to postpone the course. I know that it means cancellation for the course of a lot of our seniors that are senior here. Obviously, individuals are taking the course right now. We discussed the enrollment. I think there's been some questions about the enrollment projections. You know, we would never discuss with the contractor the enrollment projections. These discussions happened internally with myself, Director Schumacher, Assistant Superintendent Degner, school counselors and principals. I've spent a lot of time on the phone with school counselors weekly, finding out, updating where the numbers are at. This isn't just a conversation we had in the vacuum on Friday or Monday morning. At the meeting on February 16th, I stated I thought the number was at 15 to 17, but I have to confirm. I sent the numbers to the board on Monday that it was only at 8 and 6, 6 for City High and 8 for West High.
The numbers are right there, Mr. Botchway, and you can look through them. What I'm hearing is that you failed us. That's what I'm hearing. At the expense of whatever money you have because you are willing to offer $100,000 for an agriculture class. What I'm hearing is that you failed us. That is what I'm hearing.
I totally understand that. I just for clarification, I am not the individual who has
You don't have to
apportioned.
be. You don't have to be. My point is, we have been begging and pleading and demanding for this course, and I've been here so many times when I could have been studying for a final. I'm pretty sure I failed my math test today because I was stressing about this. That's what I was thinking about when I should have been thinking about Pythagorean identities. This is what I was thinking about.
I do want to address, and I do feel, you know, there's a lot of feelings I have right now. I do want to address the particular notion of not notifying individuals in the course. That falls squarely on me. Again, I knew the individuals in the particular course because I looked at the course listing that morning. I did feel uncomfortable sending individual emails out to each of the individuals on the course because it wouldn't be normally what we do, and so that's why I waited till send the principals the email and then have the school counselors to follow up. But that is solely on my shoulders that I did not notify you again until, you know, with the sod email at 10:57 at night or sometime at night.
Thank you. We've heard you. I think we've shared our concern about the process. Kingsley's given us some update on the process. I do think maybe we need to have a debrief at the end of the board meeting, Steve, with your team, and have for the conversation. I do think that we do need to move on. I don't know that we're going to resolve anything else at this point. I think we've heard you very loud and clear, and appreciate very much you coming and sharing your disappointment and your concern.
Hi, my name is Lisa Covington. I was going to teach the course, and so I just wanted to clarify. I emailed you some of our communication that Kingsley has quoted from, and I want to also make clear that when I met with the district on the 19th of December 2017, I informed Mr. Botchway that my traditional rate of pay was $3,000 a month traditionally. And so I informed him of that. So if you're going to expect a course to be built from the ground up to co-create with students and for me to train my own students to attend as volunteers, to receive internship credit, all of these different things came into play. Honestly, I would teach this class tomorrow out of a schoolhouse for free because of these voices. And so I think that when you're dealing with structures like a school district, it's important to note that there are structures in place that could allow this course to happen, and there are structures in place that could allow it to fall as it has. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to take an action item to follow up on this at the end of the meeting or between the regular meeting and the work session. And again, open meeting. Well, this is with the district administration, not the full board. We're a little bit out of protocol here, and I'm trying to be responsive to the students that came and expressed their point of view. I think there's an additional conversation that needs to happen with the administration team, not the full board, not an open meeting, not an agenda item, but I do think there needs to be a follow-up conversation. Okay. Moving on to the other speakers and community comment, next up is Olivia Barker, followed by Katie Herbold.
Hi, I'm Leah Reitz. And I'm Maya DeGrazia.
And I'm Olivia Barker, and we're students at West High. And after the shooting in Parkland, Florida the other week, we, along with other students who couldn't be here tonight, decided that we should find a way to tell you what policies we as students would like to see implemented in our schools to keep us safer from school shootings. We believe our perspective will be helpful in creating a safe school environment. To this end, we wrote and distributed an online survey, which was taken by 159 students in the district. 70% of those students attend West High. 54% of students said that they are worried about their safety at school. 9% were unsure, and 37% said they're not scared. We then asked students' opinions on specific policies. 83% of students agreed that substitute teachers should be required to participate in intruder training. One freshman at West said, "I learned that subs don't have to go through ALICE training, which is terrifying because there's at least one sub in the building per day, and they don't know the building well enough to be able to quickly develop a plan." Substitutes are expected to fill the role of teacher, and that should include being prepared to protect students in an emergency. A second issue that students feel strongly about is the ease at which strangers can enter the school. 50% of students felt that it is too easy to get into their school and that it makes them feel unsafe. An additional 32% agreed that it is easy to get in but that it doesn't bother them. In their free response section of the survey, students expressed concerns about the 57 entrances at West High that stay unlocked most of the time. When asked for ideas for how to make school safer, 47% of responses included ideas such as locked doors, an ID system, cameras, and buzzers. Students agreed that it might be a hassle to keep all the doors locked, but that it is worth it if it means that students stay safer from intruders. In response to having armed officers in schools, 1/3 of students said it would make them feel safer, 1/3 said it would make them feel uncomfortable, and 1/3 were unsure. If you do end up putting armed officers in schools, we hope that their main purpose is to form relationships in the community and try to identify students who are at risk of becoming violent and helping them to feel included. We hope their purpose isn't only to protect us from intruders and threats, because as we've seen in Parkland, an armed officer on the scene is no guarantee of safety. In the Parkland shooting, the gunman pulled the fire alarm to get students to leave their classroom and pour towards the exits. When asked if they would feel comfortable leaving their classroom when the fire alarm goes off, almost 1/4 of students said they would not feel comfortable. We hope that this feedback is useful to you and that it will help you know how to make the students of our district safer. Thank you for listening.
Can you provide the survey for us so we
Yes.
have all the data? Thank you very much.
Or even email it if you have it electronically.
Yeah, while Olivia's passing those out, I thought it'd be kind of nice to mention that after the Parkland shooting, there's been a lot of encouragement for students to recognize any signs of other peers who might be struggling at home that might encourage them to seek violence. And my best friend and I came across a concerning Instagram post, and we had no idea where we were supposed to go to talk about it. Just because there wasn't like a good place. We were like, guidance office maybe, right? And luckily we actually ended up going in today actually, and it was handled by the guidance office and it went very well, and I think it helped a lot because they'd actually said some other students had expressed their concerns too. But because it was so hard for us to kind of figure out where we were supposed to take this information, I think it might be like helpful to just have a more structured place for students to be able to express concerns specifically about school violence, because it's becoming such a large topic and it's on all of our minds and it's on all of our teachers' minds, obviously, you know, as we're suddenly having to look for the nearest exit in our classrooms like we're on an airplane.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So Katie, and then we have Karen Meyer and Kathleen Mearden.
Hello, my name is Katie Herbold, and my husband Nick and I have 3 boys. 2 of them attend Borlaug. They're a 4th grader and a kindergartner, and then we have our 2-year-old at home. We live in University Heights, just down the street from West High, and I've been involved with the school in the past by being very involved with the school board election. I've talked to several of you at the farmers market. I've had signs in my yard. I canvassed for the school bond. We were on a flyer for the school bond, the Herbolds. I'm the vice president of our PTO, and I'm the president next year if they'll have me. I think they will. But I'm here tonight to talk about school safety, and hearing what those young ladies had to say will hit home more than anything that I have to say. So I'm just following up basically with what they had to say tonight. A group of friends and I, also parents, are here because we're concerned about equitable security across the board. We go to Borlaug. We feel very safe at our school. It's new. It has a lot of the features that were designed for this purpose. But some of my friends, even at other schools, Wickham, Horace Mann, they do not have these features that Borlaug has, and we are wondering what the best outcome should be, or the best solutions to this problem should be. Procedures in place. Hearing that subs don't have the Alice training, it terrifies me. Hearing that there are 57 doors unlocked at West High. Come on, we have to do something. We have to work together and do something about this. I don't want to hear the money argument. Parents in this town are very open to donating money. I will help you fundraise. I will sit on a committee. I will do what it takes to provide whatever we need to do to make our school safer, to make our kids, our teachers, our staff, our parents feel safer. There have been several ideas floating around in the community with parents regarding metal detectors, better cameras, bulletproof glass, a deputy on campus. That survey was very insightful. The teacher in Muscatine that has invented these locks for these doors, I don't know if you've seen this article in the Huffington Post, if this would be money well spent, if this is not the most effective thing to do. I think we need to organize a committee, a call for action that involves a law enforcement official expert in this area, a child psychologist, a psychiatrist should sit on this community. This is not an issue that should be approached without an expert in that area. I think parents from all levels and all over the school district should be involved with this community. A school board member or 2 should sit on this committee, and we need to work together. They should not be here doing this. They're kids. They're 16, 17. This is not their job. This is our job. They deserve better. We all, parents, teachers, and staff deserve better. We've got to figure it out. I am telling you my name. I'm telling you I'm willing to put in endless hours. So are the 3 women I brought with me back there tonight. We want to help you. We want to work together, but we can't just say there's no money and there's nothing that we can do. We need to figure it out. I don't know if anybody wants one of these, but yes, I can pass. You can pass them out. Got it in email. Just a 1-page double-sided. Thank you. For your time.
Karen and Kathleen, and then up next we have Julie Van Dyke.
Hi there. My name is Karen Meyer. I'm a City High parent. I'm a West High math teacher, and I'm a board member at the J.C. Meredith Soccer Foundation. 2 summers ago, at the age of 16, J.C. Meredith and my son Jackson were struck by a car, and tragically, J.C. was killed. The J.C. Meredith Soccer Foundation pays tribute to J.C. and to the sport that he and his friends love so much. The foundation aims to upgrade soccer facilities and underserved populations in our community by providing training and equipment. We've already contributed over $30,000 to the City High soccer football practice field by upgrading the area to the north end of the field. Our foundation has also contributed over $4,000 to students in the community who want training beyond the high school setting. Shortly after J.C.'s death, his uncle, Andy Mearden, who was part owner at Sittler Electric Supply, committed to helping the foundation provide lighting to the City High soccer field. Our goal was to have the lights in place by this season, which is the senior season of all of J.C.'s buddies. Unfortunately, 6 months after JC's death, Andy was also tragically killed in an automobile accident, and it was only recently that the discussion of these lights have come up again tonight. I'm joined here tonight by Kathleen Mearden, and Kathleen is JC's aunt and Andy's widow. We had a meeting last Friday to get this project up and rolling, and in attendance at this meeting, we had City High administrators, Dwayne Van Hemert, both supportive of us, and they gave us a blueprint for what we need to do to make this happen. We're here to alert you that we're looking for board approval and hope to be on your agenda for March. We have a committed group of people all committed to making this happen, and Kathleen's going to tell you a little bit more about the process of all of this that we've already done.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Mearden. I'm JC's aunt and Andy's widow. What I'm here to do tonight is just to let you know that we wish to provide a lighting solution for the soccer field that will also extend to assisting with some lighting issues that are for the football field. The individuals that we do have involved are professionals. There is Adam Hahn, a GM for Watts Group. There's John Bacon, the City High principal. Terry Coleman, our athletic director. Jose Fierro, the coach, soccer coach, Dwayne Van Hemert, the Iowa City School District Coordinator, Mike Van Dyke, Gary Watts Group. And the reason that I bring those up is because my husband used to call those the big hitters, people who would bring to the community a positive enforcement for us to get this completed. We have also made the commitment to meet again in March to get this completed. What we do have in place is that we have the expertise, the manpower, the materials, and we're getting the funding. The funding will be in place, I'm having my fingers crossed, by our time next month. And again, what we wish is just to be heard so that we can have some committal from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Van Dyke, followed by Raphael.
Julie Van Dyke. I attended the Northwest Climate Meeting last week, which is apparently the third. The principal stood at the front alone. Where were you guys? Where was the ESC? Oh, Matt was there. At the back. And he left halfway through the meeting after telling a district staff, apparently, that he was going to the bathroom. He'd be right back. Didn't come back. Left her up there alone, completely unsupported by district administration. She presented a short and long-term plan to address some of the issues at Northwest Junior High. Most of the parents in the room proceeded then to complain, fear-based complaints, racially motivated in my opinion, about disturbances in the school based on rumors that their children bring home. They blamed her for this. They sat there and said, this isn't about blame, and then they proceeded to blame her for this. Okay, there's a lot of problems with that because they don't seem to understand that she's following your ESC disciplinary policies and handbooks, which I might note I was unable to find anywhere on the district website. No one up there to explain these things, just her on her own, doing her best. Those parents don't seem to want anything less than expulsion of students, and I'll come out and say it, expulsion of black students from the southeast side. That's what I perceived that they were demanding, and they're angry at her and they're blaming her for not doing it. She doesn't have the power to do that. The ESC determines expulsion. The principals don't determine that. They wanted police in the school, armed police in the school. There are armed police in the school. Anytime there's a disturbance, the Coralville police respond, and you know what? They're wonderful. They're already there. Discipline does occur, but she's not getting credit for that, and they're still angry at her because she can't explain to them what's happened because it would violate children's FERPA and IEP rights. Let's look at the causes of this sudden disruptive environment there that's being portrayed. You, Paul Ressler, and the board that you sat with chose to cherry pick the high poverty area over on the southeast side so that you get them out of Southeast and City High, make City white again, and you put them over at Northwest, and you said you did it for their benefits, just because it would help their education. Well, it's not. They're on an hour-long bus ride in the morning, and they're pissed off because the U.S. Department of Agriculture and State Department of Ed said that you couldn't move people like that based on poverty, but you could do it based on race. So you've moved them over there because they're black. And it stinks. And you guys dumped them over there without the support. Northwest now has, as I understand it, the highest ELL of the junior highs, the highest poverty level. You changed the therapeutic classroom to a BD room. It had 3 students, 4 over the year, 3 at one time in there with a full-time teacher and a .7 social worker that you haven't backfilled now. And you got 8 kids in there now with the 3rd teacher this year and still no social worker in there. And yet these parents are upset because their children hear CPI called for over the speakers. You've dumped her there and you're not supporting her there. And she shouldn't be up there trying to explain your ESC disciplinary policies the best you can or federal law. You owe her support at the front. And at the meetings that I've attended there in the past, Ann Feldman was there, Becky Furlong was there, don't you put another black principal up there and scapegoat her and undermine her, trying to explain the best she can ESC policy. You put someone up there that can support her and answer those questions, because if you undermine her or scapegoat her or allow that to happen anymore, we're going to lose another black principal in this district right about the time we're trying to increase minority representation at the highest levels. You put her out there and you let her hang. Don't do it again.
Thank you, Julie. Raphael, followed by Nicole.
Can I have my petitions back? Thank you.
Good evening, school board member and superintendent. Yeah, the center, and me as a father, we were surprised to get this news last night. And I don't know, this is the new channel that you open now to communicate superintendent with the students and with the parents through to the newspaper. I wonder about that. I have a son and at the City High, and we never get any memo or email about this class. And I don't understand why. But I have another email related to sport or another incident, and the newsletter for the principal, but nothing about this class. So basically, I have to say that the school district had set up this class to fail in the beginning. You didn't publicize it right into the students and the fathers and the parents in general. So I was really shocked, and then I can see the frustration of the kids, and I think that you have to understand that when you do this behavior, the student will not trust in the district. And we as a parent will trust in the district even worse. So I do believe board that someone needs to hold accountable on this decision. The kids, the student, they were asking the board for how long? A year? A year.
Yeah, the kids have been asking for the year, but this course in particular has been asked for a number of years.
And now, I remember to have this meeting last year, they agree. But now eventually the class was pulled over, and I don't understand now. Now the people are saying that we should raise the money and then have at the CWJ and then pay for the teacher for that. That's what you wanted? That the superintendent want to push classes up to the schools and having in private. I don't know it's a good idea, but don't open the door. And I'm really concerned because again, right? We are supporting the students, and they are students of color, and they already have a lot of stress with the political climate, and now you put the gun situation now, and you're going to this? Really? Last time when I came here, we spoke at the Muslim holiday. We spoke about the values. So this is the value that comes from the superintendent. Believe me, it's not okay. It's not okay. I have to I'm polite right now, but I hope that you will see the problem that you have in your hands. And, you know, I think that you are concerned about the budget. Let's talk about the budget, how the community can help. If you are concerned about the students, let's put that there and then give us some time and we can reach out another students and tell us the number, how many students do you want, and we can ask the community and see if we can put that number there. But don't shut down this class just because whatever. And then I do appreciate for next time, please send us a memo. Thank you. Have a night.
Thank you.
Point of clarification to the board. The responsibility in the failure of this class falls on me and me alone. I just want to make sure that's clear. I know that there's been comments directed to the superintendent, but that responsibility falls on me and me alone.
Thank you, Kingsley. Nicole Oman?
Hi, I'm also here to talk about the Social Justice Through Ethnic Studies course. I know that the board has only been recently informed, so I'm going to keep this very brief, and I'll save the comments that I did prepare based on the Iowa Public Policy Center student climate reports for the debriefing after. But this is my first school board meeting, and I'm just here because I was so disappointed to hear about this course being canceled, and I did want to just publicly register my disappointment and also my full support for the students who are here today, who are so looking forward to this class. You heard how important it was to them, and I think it would be a travesty to cancel this pilot for what sounds to me like a standard contract negotiation, where even if it were double the cost, which my understanding isn't the case, but even in this case, the instructor was still being paid a very small fraction of the typical cost of a trimester course. So thank you for agreeing to the debriefing on this after, and I do hope we can work toward reinstating the class, because I think it would be such a disservice to these students to remove a demonstrably necessary course by an outstanding student-centered educator. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I think that concludes community comment for this evening. Up next, I'm sorry, I've lost my board docs. We are ready to move into our consent agenda. Phil, do you have any comments from reviewing the bills this month?
Sean and I did the books. It was $3 million plus in spending, $201,000 in the 31 Go Bond funding, and I'll defer to Sean on.
As I was going through, I just kind of came across some questions on how we, what funds we're using for different like music stuff, because it kind of comes from different places. But Craig and Leslie both got back to me with some explanations of how that all works out, and I was satisfied with the answer. So I appreciate that.
I'd like to pull item 8.
Second.
Anyone else? I move that we approve the consent agenda minus item 8.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries, with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. Next up, Equity Committee update. This is around staff diversity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yolanda Rivera, and I'm the chair for the Equity Committee. And we are here with fellow members of the Equity Committee, and we are here very pleased to present our very first formal monthly update. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to work with you. Each month, we will work with members of the administration to review one objective within the Comprehensive Equity Plan, and then to present our deliberations to you. We will look into what issues we're facing, what considerations we should have in mind when reviewing the comprehensive equity plan, and what you as a board can do. Tonight we will discuss objective 1, which is staff diversity. We have Equity Director Kingsley Butchway, who will provide an update. And we also have guests from C3E and Drexel University, who will share the preliminary results of a study that was conducted on current teachers of color. The Equity Committee will then share our recommendations with you for what we feel you should consider doing as a board. You can look at the board docs and you can find the presentations from Dr. Butchway and Dr. Grant. And I will now hand it over to Dr. Butchway.
So as you can see there, they're the student, and I'm sorry, I'm a little groggy because I'm sick. I've been fighting a cold for the last 2 weeks, so I apologize. As you can see from the demographic mismatch there, you see our student ratios, which are consistently growing, but then you see our faculty staff ratios that are relatively small. I know there's been a lot of questions in regards to not only in the community in relation to the town hall conversations about what has transpired since I've gotten here. I just wanted to present some numbers. These are also up on my website or on the equity website of the work we've been able to do. Obviously, this isn't enough. You know, I think if you look at the teachers and you see the rate at which we've grown from a support staff standpoint, even an administrative standpoint, we haven't reached the goals that we'd like to with our teachers. This is a constant concern of mine, and many administrators here know, and people that we work with. This is something that, you know, I spend a lot of nights and weekends trying to figure out and talking with different colleges, groups about how we can work to see some transformative change in these numbers.
So hi, I'm Cersei Stumbo, and I'm supporting the Equity Committee through the Implicit Bias and Equity Project, but I also am right now here representing the Creative Corridor Center for Equity. So we are a nonprofit. We work up and down the corridor on systemic equity issues. Our first priority that we selected in 2014 was education. We followed the lead of the Black Voices Project, and within that selected staff diversity as a priority. So we came to the board 2014, talked about strategic planning, about the big picture issues around staff diversity, and then just about 3 years ago, we entered into an agreement with the Iowa City as well as the Cedar Rapids, Linn-Mar, and Waterloo school districts to initiate an effort around increasing staff diversity. We convened a design team in 2015 in the summer, including representatives from the district and the community, to talk about what were some of the strategies we had to work on staff diversity. And then we all recognized that we ought to take a look at what the research says. What's the best practice out there? And so in doing that, we reached out to our colleagues at Drexel University, and they volunteered to conduct what started out to be a pretty small study and became kind of bigger. And so I'm really thrilled to have with me Dr. Christine Grant from Drexel University, who will share with you the preliminary findings. You have these in the board docs, and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Cersei.
So,
just do the slide. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So tonight I just want to share with you several highlights from the report that we shared with the board. As Cersei said, Deanna Hill and I started by conducting a critical review of existing literature on the topic of the recruitment and retention of teachers of color. One of the things that was very clearly observed in our review of the literature is that all students, white students and students of color, benefit from having teachers of color. In recent years, actually in the last 2 decades, the numbers of teachers of color has more than doubled, but the persistent challenge is that we can't keep them in the classrooms. The turnover for teachers of color is higher than it is for their white counterparts, and in recent years it's been increasing. We also observed in the literature that there were 2 really big gaps in knowledge. One is that the overwhelming majority of studies on the recruitment and retention of teachers of color all happen in large metropolitan areas,
New York, Chicago, LA. There's not really much known about schools that are situated in states like Iowa. The other thing that was a huge gap in knowledge is that a lot of the studies don't center race. So when you hand out a survey and teachers of color fill it out and you ask what are the reasons why you have left or you've considered leaving the classroom, they don't have boxes there for microaggressions. They don't have boxes there for a racially hostile work environment. And so the studies looking at this problem really need to do more to center race and like how race affects the experiences of teachers of color in the classroom. So from that, learning that there's so many gaps in the literature, especially to inform policy and practice for school districts like Iowa City, we decided to do a series of focus groups to look at the experiences of current teachers of color. Not only have we conducted our research here in Iowa City, but we've also done focus groups in Waterloo and Cedar Rapids. And across those 3 districts, we did one focus group so far across the 3 districts. And so the preliminary findings that I have to share with you this evening are based on those focus group conversations. So our preliminary findings thus far is that for all the participants that we talked with in our focus groups, all of them were either from Iowa or from places like Iowa. And because of that experience, they all expressed a very deep commitment to staying and teaching in schools, in their respective schools, in their respective districts. They all shared that they were devoted to their students, that they wanted to provide their students with a better education than what they received, and that they wanted to be role models for students in the community. They also all shared that in different ways, the community has expressed to them that they've really appreciated having teachers of color in the community. One teacher in particular shared that almost every Sunday when she goes to church, her pastor will point her out and say, we have a teacher in the congregation, that the congregation will applaud. In addition to these reasons, in addition to that finding, we also discovered that they play additional roles in the classroom. When we asked all of the participants, what does it mean to be a teacher of color in the classroom, they shared what we identified to be 3 roles. The first is other mothers, which is a concept that's really prominent among existing research. But other mothering is when largely the women of color, the female teachers of color, share that they mother students of color in the school, because they have a shared cultural connection with them. What many may perceive as them being abrasive towards the students of color actually perceived as them showing care towards them. The second role that they play is as intermediaries, where students of color, whether they're students in their classroom or not, come to them to talk about problems that they're experiencing in school. And on the other hand, both their principals and their white colleagues will come to them and talk about problems that they may be experiencing with other students of color in the school. So they kind of played a role as a bridge builder by bringing those 2 groups together in conversation with one another. The last role is as advocates, that they found themselves to be advocates in different school settings where they will bring to the attention of their white colleagues in the school how they needed to be more equitable in their practices, how they needed to strive together to teach all students, to seek excellence for all students. So based on these preliminary findings, we've identified several recommendations that we would like for you to consider. The first is on recruitment. To focus your recruitment efforts on recruiting candidate polls from Iowa or from places very similar to Iowa, and that there be a shared cultural connection and a familiarity with the space. The second is on retention, to improve the racial climate in schools so that teachers of color can share those additional roles that they play across the school and enhance the environment. And then lastly, for teachers of color, to compensate them for the additional responsibilities and value that they bring to the schools. So we plan to continue conducting focus groups with current teachers. Our next phase will be to begin interviews with former teachers of color to understand better why they left, and then hopefully that can help to inform future strategies and policy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Charlie Eastham. I'm a member of the Equity Committee. We're very fortunate to have the extremely competent technical advice of Ms. Stumbo here to help us with the slides. Well, we'd like to congratulate the district on the many good things that have happened over the last 3 years since the CEP was adopted, the Comprehensive Equity Plan was adopted. We acknowledge that other things must be improved, including the dialogue about why does the district need to increase the number of teachers of color and other staff and administrators within the district. We'd like to share some recommendations for what you should consider doing as a board, given what you just heard. But first, it's important to put these recommendations and reports into context. It's important to remember that when the Comprehensive Equity Plan was drafted 3 years ago, the Equity Director was under the HR office, Human Resource Office. Things have changed a lot in the past few years. The Equity Director was appropriately elevated to direct report to the superintendent, and the Chief HR Officer at that time left the district. His replacement, Jane Fry, took on other roles in her first year, so we realized that we're just now moving into our first hiring season. It seems that things are stabilizing, but and so we would expect that we'll see more engagement on the part of the HR office in this objective. And we're going to return to the idea that the HR office will definitely come to play a much larger role in the fulfillment of the CEP's Objective 1. We do recommend, or we're going to recommend tonight, that you ask for the Comprehensive Equity Plan to be updated, along with looking at how to fulfill Objective 1. In pursuing this end, we'd like to suggest that you be clear in what you're expecting, from whom you're expecting these things, and by when. We'd like you to consider that you, the board, are responsible for setting the tone for the district. You should be clear about the priority and value of staff diversity in everything that you say and do. You should be communicating challenges but attainable goals in the Comprehensive Equity Plan. We'd like you to consider being very clear in communicating CEP action steps. And we'd like you to consider developing and publicizing a plan to monitor Objective 1. We tried to think about the role of the board and the balance between board considerations and what you should expect others of us to do, including the Equity Committee as well as administration. We believe strongly that the role of the board is to set the tone and monitor the plan, not necessarily to be the body that, as we say, dig into the weeds and make the updates yourself. My colleagues are going to explain what each of these points mean to you.
So with asking for the CEP to be updated, we need to make sure that the right people are at the table. We need to ensure that anyone that has a step to implement is seated at the table and has a voice when we update the plan. That includes at least the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, as well as the Director of Equity and Engagement on the administrative side. And we, as the Equity Committee, have already expressed our willingness to help in the process and give any support you need. You as a board, like Charlie said, it's not your job to dig into the weeds and do it, but there are recommendations that you could do and give direction on how these updates should proceed. For example, you can ask that those involved in the process revisit each objective again and reevaluate what the expected results of each objective are. What are the plans? What are the steps? What are the timelines that we have to achieve these steps? Who is responsible? Who are the parties responsible? And what are the metrics that we are using to know if we have achieved the steps? In doing so, they should connect these to the strategic goals of the board. Use the recommendations from literature review or studies. Keep in mind the importance that the emotional state of being one of the few teachers of colors in the district has on them, and make recommendations that are tangible. You should consider expanding the CEP to include language or ELL, but in doing so, you need to make sure that any new points that are added, you ensure that the pertinent administrators and advocate are help with the update.
Next, we would like you to set the tone for the district by being clear about the priority and value of staff diversity, communicating the challenging but attainable goals in the CEP, and communicating action steps by demonstrating that we can do this. Next, you can develop and publicize a plan to monitor Objective 1, which I'll speak a little more about. So Objective 1, what you can do is ask for hiring results in August and see how staff of color are faring in November, and then ask once again for hiring plans in February 2019. We as a committee would also like to work with the Assistant Superintendent for HR and the Director of Equity and Engagement to prepare for the August Equity Committee update. We did work with the Equity Director on this update, but we hope to expand who we work with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I apologize, I'm terrible with names. But when you were giving the report and you were talking about the turnover and you were saying that, you know, one of the problems is in the survey, do you have like recommendations on what we, you know, besides the microaggressions and things like that, as far as what we can do to make sure that we're capturing the data we need to that way?
Yes, there can be revisions made. Like, does your district have an exit survey that's given to teachers of color or given to teachers just when they exit the district? Any teacher?
Do we, Jane?
Yes, and so that information is sent out to any teachers that exit the district. It was a part of your affirmative action plan that you reviewed last year. I think Director Rotland actually asked a question about it, and I believe you did too, Director Hemingway.
Okay. So, but as far as, you know, getting the data, like, can we make sure that we're not missing the data points that have been illustrated tonight about the microaggressions and those types of things?
We can look into how we could update our exit survey. It's sent online as soon as we're made aware of, usually when you're made aware of at the board packet level, of any resignations or changes in unemployment status from that perspective. But we could change some of the questions. Right now it focuses on, you know, improvements from the district, things that you you know, would like to continue in the district, and then ultimately whether or not you'd like to have an exit interview.
Right. And yeah, with the as far as targeting people in the state and that, boy, I'm 100% with you. And I know with Kingsley we've had discussions before about short list of things, and you know, we've got talent here, identified talent, and talent that we've had an opportunity to test drive. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating when, and I know we've had some information about an administrative position that's going to be an internal search and everything like that. Now, I don't know if we're violating anything, if we have like a Rooney rule like they do. I apologize that I'm saying the pro football thing while wearing a hat. But you know, that there's a requirement that you have a minimum of a number of minority candidates interviewed for a position whenever it's available. Do we violate anything by enacting some type of a policy or anything like that, or is that something we can?
You know, so just for clarification, the Rooney Rule, as Director Hemingway is speaking about, is a rule in the National Football League that speaks to ensuring that you interview a minority candidate when interviewing for any type of coaching position. In our district, our policy speaks to when we have a candidate of color in the pool that meets the qualifications of the position, we will interview that particular candidate.
Okay.
So, yes.
Right. And like I say, we have, and I'm reluctant to say names, but I know of minority subs we have in the district that, you know, are working and are wanting full-time employment and things like that. It just seems to me that, you know, as you illustrated, drawing from a pool that's living here, knows the community and things like that. We've got to take advantage of those opportunities, and I would encourage everyone to do so going forward. But I just with that, that's always something that's kind of been in my mind. And this is something for further discussion, but I've always felt that the equity director position needs to be restructured, and with some of the tasks that are at the purview of the equity director, that should be a position that answers to the board. And but like I say, that's a further discussion. But I want to thank everybody for the work you put into this and the recommendations, and I hope that we will adopt every single one.
Dr. Grant, while we have you here, I assume, Iowa City is not unique in this struggle. I think.
Not at all.
Is there, what kind of work is being done to, I got to assume that we need to look at the teaching profession and get, more people interested in it, or, places like Iowa City and everywhere else are fighting over the same limited number of great minority teachers, right? And so I'd be curious kind of your thoughts on, what other things we could do to make that pool bigger if we're all sort of trying to recruit from the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been some successful grow your own programs, some starting as young as middle school, where teachers identify or students themselves profess that they have an interest in becoming a teacher, and that the schools form teacher clubs, and they do things with the students to sustain their interest in becoming a teacher, particularly in the high school level, and that the district forms a relationship with a nearby university to help those students who've been identified with an interest in a profession to go to college, become a teacher, and then come back and work in that district for a set amount of years. But it starts younger by identifying the students and cultivating that interest in them. That's one example. Other Grow Your Own programs have started with paraeducators, people who are working as teacher assistants in the school, and then they show an interest in becoming a teacher of record, and also a similar relationship with the university to kind of facilitate that. I know that at Waterloo, they've developed a relationship, I believe, with the University of Northern Iowa, a program called Teach Waterloo, where they're connecting their paraeducators, paying for them, or there's an arrangement, I don't know the financial arrangement, but they're going to college, earning their degree, and then coming back. There's a number of other programs, but those are two models that have shown to be successful nationally.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you all so much for the report. Appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you.
Just quickly, I just wanted to remind you, in August, we are hoping as an equity committee to revise the hiring data from this year and present the results and anything that we find. So we'll be back in August with that information.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Moving on to Appendix 2, Paul, from a policy and governance perspective.
Yep, policy and governance went back to Appendix 2 and changed it so that it would be in line with what we plan on doing with that superintendent evaluation. So the changes are listed in there, and we're just looking for approval of that.
I have a quick just clarification. So it appears to me that the section in black that's listed under the month of June was perhaps moved, or no, that was under June, and the red part was moved into June. In the past, we have viewed the superintendent evaluation and the superintendent contract as separate processes. And I think we can aim for June to start the contract talk, but in the past, we've done that at a different time. We've done the evaluation first and then did the contract separately. So I'm not saying it needs to be changed, but just the fact that it's all being put in June now, I don't want to set the expectation that we're going to always accomplish all of that, because I think that's an awful lot to accomplish in 1 month with us all doing the evaluation, meeting to talk about goals, meeting with the superintendent, and then meeting with the superintendent about contract, and then voting on contract. That's a lot to happen in the space of 1 month with 2 meetings a month. So I'll just put that out there. The other thing, and this is I don't know if this matters, but in under June, the first black bullet says that the board revises the contract and agrees on feedback to the superintendent. So again, those would be separate, but it says may be held in open or closed session in accordance with state statute. And correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I thought that contract discussions were held in exempt session.
That would be correct.
So again, I don't know if that matters, but the agrees to feedback to the superintendent part would be something that could be in closed session, but the contract part would be an exempt session. And where that matters is the state code defining very clearly when we're allowed to be in closed session or exempt session, and whether it's recorded or not, whether there's minutes taken, that kind of thing. So I think it looks great, so please don't misunderstand that I'm trying to pick it apart. I just want to make sure that we're capturing these things when we're here at the table.
As I recall, I mean, we did go through this at our meeting. We kind of talked through the timeline of what made sense to go where. It is potentially a lot in a month. I think the timeline makes sense as to how they're all put together there. You know, obviously not all in one meeting kind of thing, but together shortly, one after the other, I think makes sense to me. You know, we haven't been real good at getting stuff done on time, so that's definitely a concern. But I think if we, you know, have that as a goal, that those things are close together, it makes sense. I do worry about making sure that we have it clear what's open, closed, exempt, and make sure we don't mess that up. But I'm not as concerned as of the timeline, because I think it makes sense process-wise.
We can take it back and make the minor adjustments and bring it back to you.
I mean, could we agree on minor adjustments in discussion? I mean, for me, if we just said to be completed by June, to account for the timing issues, if we could start before June, say end of May, mid-May, to begin the evaluation process. For me, it was important to complete these steps before the next school year starts, so that we completed the evaluation, we completed the contract work, we completed the goals and development opportunities for the superintendent before we start the next school year, so we've got a good plan laid out. And so if we could just say to be completed by June, and then maybe just take out that parenthetical in the bullet that Lori's referring to, so it's not even suggesting an open or a closed session. I mean, we know that negotiations have to be done in exempt. We just do it. I mean, I would suggest with those two minor edits, we go ahead and try to approve it tonight if other board members are amenable.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not a timely thing, so if we need to take it back and do the right process to go through it and change it from there and then bring it back to you, I'm okay with that.
Does it need to go back to committee, or does it just need to be brought back to us at the next meeting?
I don't think it needs to go back to committee. I think we just make those tweaks. And I'd be even fine if we said, you know, June, July are getting it done by the school year, I think is key. And if it gets to June and we have to push things back, I don't have a problem with that. So I'm fine, Paul, with you just tweaking it. And
I think we should just take it back to committee, get the wording correct, instead of just saying something like, or whatever. Let's just iron it out. We'll get it done and bring it back.
To get done prior to, isn't July when contracts start generally? Or am I wrong there? Because I don't think it's get it done by the school year. I think it's get it done before July.
Right.
Right, all employee contracts are July 1.
So I just want to make sure that it's.
So would P&G have time to do that and bring it back for the March 27th meeting?
We won't have a March P&G meeting, but we'll have one in April.
It'd be April.
Okay, we'll shoot for the April meeting, first April meeting, to bring this back.
And thank you to the committee, by the way, for your work on this. I appreciate making the changes. I do think that this is a great plan that will work better for future boards and the superintendent as well.
How about the 600 series
Yep.
edits?
The 600 series edit, these are state mandated ones, and we updated the things that need to be updated that were out of date. You'll see those in the yellow. I don't know if you guys have any questions, we can answer those for you. Otherwise, we're looking for approval on that as well.
Is there a motion to approve?
Well, I just real quick, Steve, could you clarify the student proficiency requirements of the district for students that enroll in tech ed courses, and how, that, since that's being added.
Is the question in terms of which courses they're allowed to enroll in?
Right, yeah, and how that.
So it
how
differs
that-
depending on the classes that they're enrolling in, and whether they're in-house classes or whether they're students taking classes off campus. Diane, do you want to share that process with the board?
Sure. According to the Senior Year Plus legislation, all students who take part in Senior Year Plus, which includes PSEO and concurrent courses at the college, are required to meet a proficiency level, except students who are enrolling in career and tech ed courses at those colleges. They do not need to meet that proficiency level. And then boards are able to, if they would like, to set some alternative criteria for students who maybe didn't demonstrate proficiency on the state assessment, and that's what this policy does. But none of it would apply to anyone who's taken a career and tech ed course because they don't need to meet that requirement.
I move that we approve the board policy 600 series as indicated in the packet.
Second.
Any further conversation? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you, Kim. Operational work, school safety, our first item. Steve, I thought it would be timely for you to give us an overview of what kinds of safety measures we have in our schools, and then maybe refer to the memo that went out to the district.
Sure, I'll just share a little bit about the work that we've done over the course of the last 5 years, which is really when we started this process. And I think probably the thing that's most visible to parents is the change in the entryways in our districts. So if you look at new buildings, it's a very clearly standardized process where you're coming in through a foyer, often buzzing in camera access by staff so that they can see who's coming in. There's an intercom there so that they can make sure that they understand your purpose in the building. You're checking in through the office, which requires a sign-in before you're sent out into the school with some type of identification so that people in the school know who you are. So that's very common now as you look at all of our new construction. And then we went through the process of retrofitting facilities. And so if you think about maybe a school like Lucas as a good example of that, where the kind of described it as the beehive concept, where the office was in the middle of the building, and so people could come into the building and perhaps move around unimpeded without direct visual sight line of the office. So when we went through that remodeling process, we swapped it out. We moved the art room from the front to the middle, and we moved the office from the middle out to the front. So we could put in one of those vestibule systems so that, again, you go through the office. So you see that in remodeling at Twain. You see that in remodeling at what's going on right now at Longfellow Elementary School. And so that process is very consistent now at the elementary school. So you see that everywhere. That process is also very consistent at the junior high. And right now at the high school, the last building that we're working on is West High School. We needed to do some pretty significant wiring upgrades inside the facility. Those are nearing completion, which will allow us at the end of the school year to create the same system that you would see in our elementary and our junior highs, again, where you're coming through that type of vestibule system through the office to check in before you're allowed out into the school. Right now at Liberty High School, we have that, new construction. At City High, there's one entrance, and again, we've got that camera intercom system so that when you're coming to school, you can buzz in there and they can verify who you are before they send you into the school. So that's something that you see that's really visible, that's out there. Things that you don't see that's less visible is staff training. We started that process again about 5 years ago where we entered into dialogue with area law enforcement agencies and really asked them, what's the best practice? What should we be doing? As part of that, they developed some training methodologies for us to use in the schools. That includes ALICE training for all of our district staff every year, and also active shooter drills. And that's obviously a little bit more traumatic from the standpoint of training, but also valuable as our staff continue to go through it year over year. We learn each year from that process. Our staff are integral in the debriefing of that and helping us better understand it. It also gives law enforcement the opportunity to be active in our schools. This takes place when students aren't there, and so they're able to move about inside the schools and better understand the layout and understand how staff react when these types of situations occur. So again, that debriefing process, that dialogue with them is a really integral part of what we're doing. Door locks are another example. We've got intruder locks in there that allow teachers to lock the doors from the inside. I know that was one of the challenges when we first started looking at this, was the only way for a teacher to lock their door was to go out into the hallway. That may put them in a position of danger. And so the intruder locks actually allow the teachers to lock the doors from the inside now. It's obviously much more secure for students and staff to go through that process. So quite a bit of work that we've been doing. I don't want to spend too much time just going through those. If there are specific questions you can have, I might be able to answer that, or other members of our team could share some information with you.
I do have a quick question. So our subs don't receive part of their orientation. Do they receive the ALICE training? Is that offered for them?
They have not been going through the ALICE training as we've been providing it for our staff, so that's one of the things that we've taken a note on, is that opportunity to do that. One of the things that we do is throughout the course of the year, we provide training to staff, and so they have the option to come in and go through that periodically throughout the year. I see Jane wants to chime in here, so I'll let her just jump in real quick.
Just that's, excuse me, been a recent discussion of adding into all of our orientations, whether it's with our substitutes and our new staff that are coming on board as part of our district staff, is to add a component of the safety training. The ALICE is a little more difficult because people aren't in a single building. You know, the training's much more meaningful when you're part of that staff and you know the building and you know the layout and you know the plan. But we do want to talk with some of the generalities about that. Back in 2011, we participated in the VIS training with the University of Iowa safety staff too, and that's just a little smaller component that embeds the ALICE training. So we've been talking with our HR staff about at least including a module in that in our orientation training for everyone, and then figuring out how do we maybe incorporate that with some of our staff who are doing longer-term vacancy fills within some of our buildings.
And one of the other things that came up that's tied to that is in this recent interaction we've had with law enforcement is looking at a comprehensive response for staff. So better understanding how tornado reactions, fire reactions, intruder reactions may or may not be linked together. So what are the actions that you take in each of those? And that allows teachers then to have better dialogue with students. So that was part of one of our recent interactions with area law enforcement agencies as we look at how do we better train staff, students, and community members on how we respond. So one of the things we're working on right now is a video that would actually provide a systemic emergency response that can be shown to all students in the district so that they understand what's different between a tornado drill, a fire drill, and an intruder drill, so that they can better understand how they work together. I know one of the things that the students mentioned, we know that about Florida, is what happened when there was a fire alarm and how did that intersect with an intruder. And so one of the things that law enforcement shared with us was how to have that dialogue effectively with our students and our staff. You know, one of the things that the kids said and we've heard is, you know, should I actually go outside now when there's a fire drill? Well, we want to make sure that students know how those things work and what the staff role is, what the student role is in part of that process, so that they feel that sense of security. We certainly don't want students dawdling around if there's a fire in the building and an alarm goes off. So how do we make sure that we translate those drills into the real world experiences? I think one of the things that you're aware of is we're going to do some voluntary work with our community later this spring. Again, in our conversations with law enforcement and knowing this from working with our staff, those intruder drills, when you do those, can be very traumatic. We had a lot of staff members who we allow staff to opt out if that's something that could be potentially an issue for them, and we have that every year. We have staff every year after we go through that we wind up having follow-up with them because of the impact that active shooter training has on them. And so we're sensitive to that. We want to make sure that as we go through this process with our students that we understand how to do it in a way that affords them that opportunity if they are willing to participate in it, but also that they have the ability not to if that's something that they're concerned about. So we're going to work on a volunteer basis to start with, involve all of our local law enforcement agencies. We're going to ask parents if they've got an interest in participating, that they certainly can come sit in as a student. If they would prefer to just observe, that opportunity will be available for them too. We're looking at secondary students right now. We've had some conversations with our students in terms of what's age effective and what might not be. And so at this point in time, we're not going to have elementary students in on that process. And then we'll evaluate that as we go through and get feedback from the students and better understand what the appropriate next step is.
We had a speaker tonight expressed an interest in being part of a safety committee. Is there any are there any plans on resurrecting a safety committee? I know when our first I asked the question, you know, when we did our first round of safety measures following Sandy Hook, that it was there was a committee. I spoke with somebody that was on that, but is there an interest to do that going forward and get students? I mean, we've seen how displayed tonight and on other nights the passion and interest by our student population to be involved in these discussions as well.
We've got students, parents, and community members that have expressed an interest in that, and that's definitely something that we are interested in getting their input. I know one of the things that we struggle with, and it comes from our interaction with law enforcement, is at what point is it appropriate to involve the general public, at what point not appropriate. I know that there have been quite a few, I think you've received some of those emails too. I know some of them have been forwarded to me with concerns that some parents have expressed about who do you tell what your plans are, and so we're getting input from local law enforcement to help us understand what's the appropriate methodology to get that kind of input, and what's the appropriate amount of information to share. So yes,
Right.
definitely interested in that.
And at our legislative discussion, was it last Friday? Senator Kevin Kenney, who's a Johnson County deputy, expressed kind of those same concerns.
Kind of a balancing act.
Well, and if anything that we've seen is that evil can learn from things, and sometimes when you have all that available, it's there. One thing I'm interested in making sure, and there was a discussion at the Englert that I know Matt Degner was in, and I just was in the audience, but a discussion of making sure that information is shared that way, and I brought that up also at the discussion on Friday, and Kevin Kenney was there, and he was saying with our Joint Communication Center that he thought that lent itself to having better shared communication than it has been in the past, but still the U of I law enforcement is not involved with the Joint Communication Center. I think it's important that we look at that, you know, that we're never in a situation where we look and we didn't connect dots and that type of a thing. So something that coordinates information. And so if we have a situation that we're aware of from a school standpoint, that maybe law enforcement's aware of that too. So then when there's something there, there's an intersection of that information. And I think too, with we know with our climate studies that we have students that don't feel safe in the buildings, and that's not necessarily from an armed person in the building. It has to do with other things, with bullying and communication and feeling apart and welcomed in the buildings, and that's a big part of it too. Just that school community and that people feel connected and they don't feel outcast or ostracized. And I think that's a big component of this going forward too, and I want to make sure that, you know, we have those discussions going forward as well.
Steve, I just have a real fast question. Do we have some verbiage that's used when there is, heaven forbid, an active shooter in the building? Is there, like, I had heard that at this school they yelled code, or they put it over the intercom, code red, and that told all the teachers to lock their doors and put paper up so that the shooter couldn't see. Do we have anything like that?
We've consistently used common terminology throughout the building. I'm not going to actually share that right now, but yes, we have used common terminology, and that's evolved over the years. Of course, we used to have a hard lockdown situation, which was our immediate response for everything. After participating in the VISP process and then the ALICE process, law enforcement said, we'd like you to have an array of choices that are available, and so that's part of our training process.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a situation, I know when we first got on, we were going through that whole flip folder thing. Is that still kind of where administrators go to?
Yeah, we have a district emergency plan. We have building emergency plans. We work those with our local law enforcement, so they review those annually to make sure that everything's up to date on that. And that does provide that first line for staff in the building so that they know what the appropriate responses are as they face different types of situations out there, because we recognize that there's a potentially multifaceted threat spectrum out there, and we want to make sure that they're prepared for it. And again, it's everything from tornadoes and fire to bomb threats, intruders, et cetera.
So next Tuesday, we have an operations committee, and security and safety is the #1 thing on that agenda. And a lot of the stuff, I put together a list and send it to the folks that are going to be at the meeting, that we're going to cover this stuff. And one of those things is talking about, would we create a committee with parents and stuff, and what would that role be? I think that's the important part, as we talk about what kind of information to pass along. So we're going to dig a little deeper in a lot of that stuff. We're going to look at the facilities part of it, but also just kind of look at general process. So we're going to dig deeper on all these questions. The one thing that I was wondering about, and maybe I'm a little behind, but I know there was a bill at the State House requiring districts in Iowa to have an emergency plan, and I know we already have one, but was there anything prescriptive in it telling you need to do these things, or it's just forcing everybody to do something?
That would be the Department of Ed as they go through the writing process to enforce that, that would give them the discretion then to determine what would be in that plan. And actually, one of the things that you might want to add to your list, which I actually didn't think about until maybe a week or so ago, was this particular iteration of the board, because of the turnover of the board, has not been through an active shooter drill, and that was something that we have done with the board in the past. We used our staff here at the ESC as our audience, as we have right now, and I would definitely encourage us to go through that process again. It was, for the administrators that were here, it was a pretty eye-opening experience. I know one of the things the young lady said was kind of like the airplane where you sit down and look at your exits. I would presume you might not know where all your exits are here, and I think that would be beneficial for you to go through that process too.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And I've been through active shooter at West, and it's valuable. You learn a lot about yourself and your reactions in situations. The young lady, Maya DeGrazia, who mentioned that, also said, when she did see something disturbing on Instagram, she wasn't quite sure who to go to. So I'd like to make sure everybody knows who to go to. And that kind of comes back to this point of kind of what Phil was saying about the climate. We know a pretty clear profile of a lot of these folks, and they're all pretty lonely. And so if we are identifying our kids who are lonely, who don't have a lot of friends, regardless of their protected class status, but just the kids who are outcast and lonely, that we're teachers know who to go to. And I know we all say the guidance office, but I don't think that's always clear, and there might be certain people who are better at certain things. So getting that message out to staff and students, kind of like if you see something, say something, and not just a violent person coming in, but if you see a kid who's struggling, who's alone, what are we doing to reach out to them from that suicide prevention, from that mental health standpoint? And I just don't want to lose that piece.
Actually, one of the notes that I took from that, we've got a pretty successful program that we've built that allows students, especially because they live in a technology-rich environment, that allows them the opportunity to use their phone and technology to share concerns that they might have about bullying or harassment that are taking place. And I think there's an opportunity for us to add a third avenue, which is I have a concern. It might be about my safety or somebody else's safety, but it's not necessarily a bullying or harassment issue. It's not a sexual harassment issue. This is, like you said, this is a mental health issue. And I think if we provided that type of outlet for our students, it gives them an immediate opportunity to make that kind of report without having to wonder, who do I go to, or do I want to be seen making that report type of thing. So it gives them that opportunity to do that and to push that information to us relatively quickly.
Great.
So we can have an update from the Operations Committee, Sean, maybe at the March
Yeah, I've been
meeting?
adding everything we've talked about to my little list of things that I already had, so we're going to hit it all next week, and we can come back and give an update.
Fantastic, thank you, appreciate the conversation. Moving on to the Seclusion and Restraint Task Force update. Looks like Lisa's coming up to do that.
Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled special education update, which includes more than just the Restraint and Seclusion Task Force update, but we did plan all of the special ed updates this year so that they kind of coincide right after those group meetings, so that it's sort of a checks and balances to keep all of those different meetings on schedule. But also provides me an opportunity to come and tell you what exciting things that we're doing. So I did put a lot of other things in here too, because we're doing a lot. So I think the one thing that we don't get enough opportunity to talk about, or we haven't so far this year just because of other pressing matters, are some of the efforts underway around instructional improvement. And to me, this is probably the most important thing that happens. Figuring out a good system for making sure that we understand what our current outcomes are for our students with disabilities, and then understanding what instructional practices are pervasive throughout the district, both in general education and special education, that are designed to specifically target gap areas for those students. And then figuring out what further support do we need, what further support in professional learning do teachers need, what kind of materials do we need to make sure that we have available, readily available, not just available in pockets, and then how are our special education teachers working with general education partners, coaches, because really the improvement of outcomes for students who have IEPs in special education is really dependent on that joint effort. It can't be all or one of the other camps. It has to be really both those general educators and special educators working kind of in tandem with a really cohesive and tight system of really high quality instruction. Because instruction matters. It matters more than anything else that we do here. So, sometimes in the hubbub of getting everything managed, we kind of forget to mention some of the instructional stuff. So that's when I wanted to really go over here. And one important way that we have targeted instructional improvement is through our partnership with the Iowa Reading Research Center, which is really a Department of Education effort, but it's housed out of the University of Iowa. Deborah Reed is the director of Iowa Reading Research Center. But the whole entire idea behind the Iowa Reading Research Center is to just improve reading instruction throughout the state. So they have ways that they can partner with school districts in order to help us advance our practice. So specifically, our special education group is partnering with them in a formal partnership to do just that and advance practice in reading instruction across the district. We're starting with elementary teachers and targeting some really very high quality professional learning being available for those teachers, and then also pairing those availability of high quality materials so that they'll have, of course, appropriate materials to be able to do that teaching with. We're requiring the professional learning for all elementary special education teachers we're requiring the training but not the timeline. So they have till we've already offered some trainings, and between now and next fall we'll cycle teachers through when it's probably the most convenient for them to do it. They have some choice on the timeline. But training from the center, and then also training to use those materials. And it's really focused on the skills and strategies of the teacher. Yes, we're buying materials, but we're not adhering closely to some prepackaged, material that we're just purchasing and then dropping into teachers' laps. Really, the most important thing in our instruction is the skill of the teacher. So they also have to have appropriate materials, but so we're looking at those instructional strategies and help for teachers understanding just how does reading develop at all, from the ground up, and then what can they do to accelerate that progress for students. So we know that everything that we put our resources into, we need to monitor the effectiveness of those efforts. So we're actually giving some baseline screening to students, and we know we're successful when the students are successful. So that's how we're monitoring the effectiveness of this entire effort. And actually the university, a statistician from the university will do that for us. Do you have questions about that part? Comments? We have a lot of other instructional improvements going on too, but I thought that was a highlight. So Then, we had talked about the fact that we're undergoing this major process to take a look again at our district developed service delivery plan. If you remember, I had recommended, well, actually, I think some of you weren't even on the board at that time, but I had recommended the finalized plan that had previously been made to the board, which had very insightful questions about how much public comment did we really receive about this, which prompted us to go back out and mailed all parents of students with IEPs that finalized plan at the time, asking for additional, really went out and tried to solicit additional feedback, which we got some, which then caused us to take another look at the plan. So we started kind of over from scratch, and Beth Steenwick is our external consultant that's helping us. So I think one important thing to note here is that we decided to go above and beyond. There's kind of a canned process that's expected throughout the state for how a district is supposed to kind of minimal requirements for districts when they go to renew their plan. And we've tried to purposely overshoot that and get a whole lot of information from the community through the online survey that was open for the whole month of January. And then we'll have, from that, we had respondents indicate an interest in possible phone interviews and focus groups. And so we are going to be, have those phone interviews underway soon. The focus groups will be in late March, and the plan committee will meet sometime in the span of April, May. We're expecting to have a draft up for public comment during June and possibly July. It will be at least for 30 days. And at that point, we'll, kind of make a determination as to making sure. I think a lot of people didn't know it was up on the website before, so we'll try to, Kristen's been working with us really closely on getting our feedback and getting the word out on all of these things. So I think we'll figure out some additional strategies to solicit that input again. And then make a recommendation to the board for adoption of the plan following that. Last time I presented, I had talked about the, I think it was when we made the announcement during January that the survey was up. I can tell you we had over 1,000 responses to the survey, and we're taking a look at all of the information that's come back. I also had a question at that time if I was going to be reporting out to you the results, and I definitely plan to report the results, but that's after all 3 tiers of input have been gotten, so that we can give kind of more of a comprehensive report about, instead of 3 different presentations. So if you're wondering about that, yes. Questions about that part?
I don't have a question, but I just want, this is one of those really wonky things that most boards will totally gloss over and not pay attention to, but I really appreciate the extra effort we're going to solicit this feedback. I'm glad we're getting good responses, because this is not, I don't know if anybody else does this to this level. I've never heard of it happening that way. It's usually just like a lot of the just canned stuff that come in, formal approval, move on. So I appreciate that we're reaching out, we're getting this input, and that we're going to see a new plan later this summer.
Thank you. I don't know of any other district that's gone any beyond the expected kind of canned process. But it was perfect timing for us, because we were at a point where we really wanted a lot of community input for a lot of planning purposes. So this just gave the perfect reason to go out and do a really great job of that. A lot of times the special ed plan in a district is kind of seen as like a rubber stamp type activity, which then is just a waste of time. So we're really looking forward to that. I think the survey was great. I had a lot of people tell me that they really appreciated being able to give responses in the survey, but then to also have additional opportunities for that input, I think is going to be really good too. So we had a lot of people indicate interest. I think there were over 50 who indicated interest in community and IEP parents in both of those other opportunities. So our plan right now is to include every person that wanted an additional opportunity. So. So following our state complaint for restraint and seclusion, we were required to put together a corrective action plan, which is kind of a long drawn-out process. You know, the putting together of the plan isn't long, but being approved for the plan actually is long. And, you know, the first time that we had submitted it in September, it was accepted with one required revision, which is investigating that link between the denial of FAPE, possible denial of FAPE, and restraint and seclusion. So, in other words, how can we answer the question? How do we know for our students who have IEPs that we're not denying them of a free and appropriate public education when we've got them excluded a lot? So we had to kind of put some decision-making rules into place. So I put in a district-level decision-making rule that applies in all buildings we've got those building level 103 document reviews. So every building reviews all of their restraints and seclusions every single month, and they document doing that. And so when they're doing that, they just take that information and decide, is it time to call an IEP meeting for this student, which I think is a really good addition to that plan. So I was actually really glad that it was required because it gave us a chance to really think about that. So in the policies and procedures and practices update or required actions, we had to review all the policies, and which includes a whole lot of stuff. It's our formal board policies, and then also administrative guidelines, annual notice on our website, and all of that work was approved. The administrative guidelines that that have been approved for us to be put in place will be coming to you in a memo as soon as they go back through our attorney, and you'll be hearing more about that. It doesn't require formal board action, but we're definitely putting a memo together so you'll understand, what it means, what's required, and have more information on that as soon as it comes back from our attorney. We were required to address our staff training, which was extremely comprehensive, included PBIS training across the whole district, staff training for using if you remember, we talked about earlier, the electronic reporting from our 103 kind of gives those buildings that real-time information to be able to process and make sure that we're doing all we need to do and can do for the students. And so all of that was part of the training plan. We had to train people of how to use it and how to process it and how to work through it. Consideration for compensatory education, students who within a calendar year, were determined to have been extensively secluded, which meant 10 or more occasions during that calendar year. We were supposed to meet with their IEP team and determine the IEP teams met and determined whether or not that student should be owed compensatory education. So all of those meetings were held on time. All of the determinations. I've had a lot of questions about this, and I want to make sure that people understand. The IEP team met and made the decisions about compensatory ed. We didn't have any representatives. AEA representatives were included if they should be part of the ordinary reevaluation team for the student. So that's the people who are the local contacts at the buildings were included as part of the team because they are part of the team. There was no external control or not even feedback. We just said the team is supposed to make the decision, and they did. So I really felt good about that, the process, the way that we did it. Our teams really, I think, had great, thoughtful just deliberations around student need. And we had a lot of different students come back that they were going to take advantage of the compensatory ed, and we're finishing up with our one final plan right now. And after that plan we're done with those arrangements for that student, then we've completed all of it. Mm-hmm.
How many times did you have to have a meeting after 10 seclusions or more? Do you have a ballpark figure on that?
How many times would they have to?
Yeah, you were saying that when you had a seclusion of 10 times or more, you had this?
Oh, how many students fell into that
Right,
category?
right. Excuse me.
There were around a dozen, right
Okay.
around a dozen students, I believe.
Okay, and are they concentrated at one school more than another, or they're
No, not really.
district-wide?
Yeah, yeah. I would say they were more concentrated at the elementary level,
Sure.
but not a particular building. So, you know, the students, situations where we have more restraint or seclusion often coincide with the buildings where we have behavior-focused programming located. So we've chosen as a district to locate one or usually more than one programs or program providers that are Strat 2 BD certified. So we're funneling students to certain buildings currently. So it makes sense that students who've been restrained or secluded sometimes are in common buildings, but there were several buildings. Yeah, it wasn't just one or two. Other questions about that? Okay, so I think the most important part, and I know I say this every time, and pretty much to every group that I talk to, but the most important part of all of the restraint and seclusion and behavior activity is that we continue to improve the services to students. You know, some of the things that we've been, needing to do as far as our corrective action plans, the real work that improves student outcomes really is way, way more in-depth than just those required actions. So our activity across the district with those things that I think really are the things that will move the needle for the students that we're talking about, we have increased those activities significantly, and here are some of the ways. So we provided behavior basics training for all of our principals and directors recently, a half-day course, which I actually had a lot of feedback from principals that they really enjoyed that. So we're thinking about what we can do as kind of a next step for that group too. Additional FTE was allocated for district challenging behavior team, and we have secured another challenging behavior expert that will be part of our special education team in the fall, as soon as he lives out his contract with the other agency. We do have intensive help available for Strategist 2 BD teachers. These are teachers that are students that have very significant challenges. We just need to be able, as a system, to provide the teachers themselves with intensive support. They have intensive students, so we should be able to support the teachers accordingly. So we've kind of realigned resources a little bit in order to be able to do that at the time when a teacher needs help. We should expect that all Strategist 2 BD certified teachers are going to need help at some time or another because they have really hard jobs. So we're kind of trying to organize and build our capacity to be able to differentiate our support for different teachers at different times. Our University of Iowa partnership to determine best practice in addressing behavior and mental health is also still at work. We're meeting regularly about every 6 weeks, and we'll be reviewing the literature base, evidence base for certain practices that we can kind of agree to be able to provide services that we can be able to provide to students that will both address the behavioral issues that we see and support mental health. I think the interaction between those two things and continuing to find the right resolutions for students who are multiply involved is a long-term project, but we have started it formally. And then monitoring of plan implementation integrity. The plans that students have, it's really all about the plan, and the plan has to work. When the plan doesn't work, that's when we see things like restraint and seclusion. So while we're temporarily, sometimes still having to physically manage students, that's not a resting place for us. We go back to the plan and figure out something is going wrong here if we're getting to that point repeatedly. So the what's going on here is the science behind all of the behavior and all this other work that's going on. So I think we're doing a really good job of addressing And it really first starts with making sure that the plans that are in place are actually implemented. We're talking about really technical, high-level plans. So sometimes implementation of plans slides naturally, so we have to go in and check that first. Because we don't know if it will work unless it's implemented and fully implemented. So that's one of the things that we're requiring now is implementation checks for those behavior plans. So I think that's a great step. And then, of course, we're still planning for the removal of temporary and portable seclusion structures, as we had talked about before. So questions?
So does, you're planning, so we haven't removed any as of yet?
Nope, the spaces that, where we need to remove have students in them, so probably almost all the removal will happen over the summer. But Dwayne and I have been planning that work.
And again, how many are we planning on removing? Did you?
I didn't bring that.
Okay.
All of that information with me tonight. But I mean, I can supply it to you again, but
Yeah,
I don't have it with me tonight.
And I apologize, I know that we had that before, but if we could just have how many we're planning to remove and when, and then what are.
The removal will happen over the summer.
Right.
Because students are inhabiting the areas right now.
No, I'm with you. So, but how many will be removed, and then what the numbers will have existing and where, that'd be helpful to have, thank you.
Sure. Questions? Comments? Anything?
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Appreciate it very much. Okay, we are going to discuss the Christine Grant boundary vote. Who is going to?
I can lead that. So we went through a series of meetings with community members in the North Corridor to talk to them about the movement of the elementary school from the Scanlon Farms neighborhood to the area that is at the juncture of Front Street, Mahaffey Bridge Road. Went through a series of community meetings with them. The intent was to meet with the community and then meet with the board, get input from both, draw some new maps, go back and forth, and hopefully come to some level of consensus, which we were able to do at our last meeting. There's several handouts that are available on there, and what I would draw your attention to is the one from let's see, it's titled 2/19/18 elementary handouts, and that shows the attendance areas for Christine Grant and for Penn Elementary Schools. Of particular note there, I know at the last board work session there was a large conversation about population of students that reside to the west of Penn Elementary School. That spurred a great conversation at the last community meeting about how we go about having students get to a school without potentially crossing dangerous intersections, and so that received favorable feedback from the people at the meeting. That is that the students that are west of Front Street travel north to the new Grant Elementary School, and they don't actually have to cross the main roundabout that's planned for Penn and Front Streets there, and then they're able to cross directly at the school. Then there's also a lot of conversation about the Penn Meadows area, as we're describing it, that's north of Penn Elementary School. We had quite a few people who live in that neighborhood that expressed concerns about crossing Front Street. This way they cross Penn Street. I won't say that that's without concern from the parents that live there. We had conversation about that at the last meeting. We actually happen to have a North Liberty counselor there at the meeting with us, and several parents had some extensive conversation with them about ensuring that there was both traffic calming measures and perhaps a safety patrol staffer to help students as they cross into the Penn Meadows Park and then through the park to the school. But the consensus was that people were comfortable with these maps and that they supported them moving forward. The thing that we talked about at length at both of the last two meetings was concern that parents had. And actually, Craig, while you're pulling stuff up, if you want to pull up the PowerPoint presentation from 222, and if you scroll about halfway down through there, let's see. To the right PowerPoint here. On February 19th, if you go down on the February 19th one, you'll see.
The bottom right one, Craig, the 122.
If you go to the 9th slide on there, Craig. One of the big concerns that
The one where, 122, not 222. This is the bottom right one in the list there.
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, one.
That one.
In the ninth slide on there. So what that shows is concerns that parents expressed about how many movements their kids might have to make. And in particular, there was quite a bit of discussion about the potential for an elementary school on the Scanlon Farms property and what that might mean for students in the area that's in the north part of Lincoln and the area that's in the north part of Wickham. And so parents had a lot of conversation about their concerns that their students might have to move 3 times. If they were in the North Lincoln neighborhood, they might have to move twice. If they were in the North Wickham neighborhood, they were looking for a little bit more stability as their students went through the elementary area. And so we proposed to them a potential extended guarantee on the voluntary transfer program. So right now, the way the voluntary transfer program works is parents apply each year, and it's granted on a space available basis. What we talked about was attaching an extended guarantee to students who were in grades K to 4 in 2019-20 when those schools open, and give them the opportunity to complete up through their 6th grade year at that school so that they can avoid additional moves thereafter depending on the potential opening of Scanlon Elementary School, which would necessitate another move for them. So if that were in place, parents said that they were very comfortable with the maps as they were drawn. Maybe one last note for you on the maps. One of the things that parents were really concerned about was secondary feeder programs, and they wanted to make sure that wherever their home school was, that they had that opportunity if they were looking for a transfer to follow peer students up through junior high and high school. So that was part of what we took into consideration when we drew those maps. Maybe one last thing I'll share with you, and I know, let's see, Sean, Paul, Phil, Lori, I think we're all at various meetings with me. We did emphasize with parents as they went through it, right at the beginning of every meeting, that if indeed the board was interested in re-examining attendance areas for the district as a whole, that we're all part of one family and that we would all participate in that equally if and when that prospect arises. So they knew that these maps were going to give them some certainty for 1920, if and until such time as the district as a whole looks at attendance areas. So, Amy, let's see, I don't think Nick is with us tonight. Amy, you were with me for many of those, or board members. Anything else that salient points that you think we ought to add to the conversation about this before we move forward?
I might just add that I had a conversation with Christy Hefner. I'm not sure if she's here tonight.
I do not
She
see
was going
her.
to come, but about the students in the Cherry Street block. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't going to create any attendance problems for them, because it is a greater distance for them to go to Grant than it is to go to Penn. And she said that she doesn't think there will be any attendance issues, which then, the more I thought about it, I remembered, and this is a different problem. Anyway, so the attendance issues, she doesn't think will be a problem going to Grant for that block. Last May, I think it was, I'm not sure exactly when, we had a crossing guard at Penn Street and North Stewart, which is probably exactly where these kids will cross, died after being hit by a car. And we know Penn Street's going to only get busier with the development that's happening out there to the east. So she and I talked about, and actually she was going to the North Liberty City Council meeting tonight to talk with them about the same thing, that there must be 2 crossing guards on Penn, one for the Penn students over with Penn Meadows and one for the Cherry Street block of students going to Grant. It won't work otherwise. It's just too dangerous. So.
And like I said, we were fortunate. We had a counselor, a Penn City Councilor with us for many, or North Liberty City Councilor for us with us for many of those meetings, and they talked about the need for crossing guards, and they also talked about what additional traffic features they thought that they could add as part of that city effort to help slow down traffic. There was quite a bit of concern that as the buildup goes on the east side of Penn Street, and then as it turns into North Liberty, that there's only going to be an increasing amount of traffic, and knowing that that's coming, what types of things need to be done between now and then to make sure that that area has a suppressed rate of traffic travel during that time.
Yeah.
Further questions, comments?
I just kind of go through some of my thought process as we went through these maps. I find it convenient that we're getting basically the first map and the last map, because I think those are really the two choices. The intermediate, I didn't find acceptable at all when we took Penn Meadows away from Grant and didn't do anything else. I think that really unbalanced things, both in total capacity and our FRL numbers. I think that really was not feasible. So it's either draw the line straight across or the current map that we have now. And I find them both to be acceptable, to be perfectly honest. I like the balance a little bit more with the current plan. I kind of wrote down so I could compare them side by side. The first map was 11 and 19% FRL, and now it's like 16 and 13, a little bit better balance. It brings a little bit down at Grant from the total, which I think is a good thing. I've heard some comments, kind of the opposite of that we're putting a little bit more at Penn, and as we look at some of the influx of students, they're technically in the Penn area, right, as we look at that area over by the high school and things like that. But the original numbers had Grant, pretty high up there to start with, and it's not a huge change. It's about 30 students dropping there and going up at Penn, but I think that's an important thing to have a little bit of room. I do have concerns about the safety, but knowing North Liberty, I am concerned about crossing Front Street just as much as I am crossing Penn. And you'd either have two groups crossing the one or two groups crossing the other. And so that's a tough situation. I think crossing guards are an important thing. And I think that would be true regardless of where we're at. So I think that the current map is a great balance. The original map's not a horrible one either. I prefer the most recent one myself.
Maybe just to add on that, there was a pretty lengthy debate at the last community meeting about, as you said, either going this way and this way or that way and that way. And although our North Liberty counselor was sharing some information about the safety of crossing roundabouts versus regular intersections, there was a lot of concern from parents about the roundabout crossing, and the preference then was to go north and south and not east and west, because that mitigated the need to cross that what they perceived to be in the future probably a pretty busy roundabout at Penn and Front Streets. And maybe just one last comment. That's the joy of this iterative process. I know it takes a lot longer to do that, but when we get feedback from the community, we bring it to you as a board, you look at it and say, what about? We're able to redraw some maps, go back to the community. They're able to say, what about? Come back to you. So I appreciate the time that you spent in the work sessions going through it, and certainly all of the parents who spent the evenings with us going through that process, because I think that gets us a better result in the end.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the process. It's felt a lot smoother, and I felt informed all the way along, and like I kind of know what's been going on, so it's felt really good.
So are we ready to vote as a board on?
Yeah, I just have one thing I'd add that it was brought to my attention. A newsletter went out to the Penn newsletter that went out on the 23rd, indicated that we wouldn't be voting on this until March, if I'm finding this right.
There's an original timeline on one of these things that talks about, potential timelines, and it does have kind of an extended time period in there, as I recall.
Right.
It's in one of the board docs.
And I'm just concerned if some of the feedback we didn't get was because they didn't feel it was going to be a decision tonight. I'm throwing that out there. And this demographic information that we got yesterday, I'm not as quick as Craig going through and processing it as far as how that ties in, but that's important information as well.
I'll just add about the time frame. I think in our last work session on this, we agreed that we're making this tweak that we discussed, taking it back out to the community for input, which we completed, and it felt that there was a strong agreement that this revised plan was acceptable, that we would bring it to vote at this board meeting. So I don't think we deviated from what we had talked about as a team from a process standpoint. We felt that the process had been moving effectively enough that we could accelerate from what the original schedule that was put out there. So I just wanted to note that. I think we're doing what we said. And so I would, if there's a motion to approve the proposed elementary boundaries, I would entertain that. If the board feels that we need more discussion, then we can do that too.
I move that we approve the elementary boundary as presented.
I second that.
Further discussion?
Just one quick question. Just approving the boundaries, we're not accepting all the flex recommendations, are we?
No, again, the feedback from the community was pretty adamant about they're looking for some guarantee for those students that'll be K-4 in 1920. Amy and I have looked at that. We think that's something we can accommodate, so we'll put that language together formally and bring that back to you as a board.
So are we okay with approving it separately then?
Yeah, I will vote for the boundaries. I was not ready to vote on flex language.
Further discussion? Kim, I think we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Phil, I'm not getting yours. Oh, there it is. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. And thank you for the process. Again, that was well done. Certified budget. Craig, you're up.
I'll try to make this quick. We have a timeline, and in order for the board to carry out its fiduciary responsibility to the community, I wanted to provide you with an interim update on the preparation of the 19 budget. And there's a couple of things that have changed very recently, such as today when the legislators finally decided on a allowable growth for schools. And hopefully we can then move forward with this new piece of information instead of having to guess as much as we were. But the very first slide, if you remember, when I presented the budget assumptions to you in January, we were using the 1.5% growth. That's been now adjusted to 1% growth, which is now consistent with what both the House and the Senate approved, and hopefully going forward to the governor's desk, and that'll be signed in that manner. Just wanted to reinforce with you that we are a growing school district, and as such, the state percent growth is not what our budget growth is. Our budget growth is more because we add those additional students under the formula. Our open enrollment trends have significantly changed this year with the opening of Liberty. We have a net positive change for us of 83 students actually this year. Now, fewer going out and more coming back to us. And so it's been a good positive change for us. It's still a pretty significant tuition amount, though, as you can see here, at a little over $1.8 million that goes out from to other districts for our students being educated in other places. So 1% will move that state cost per pupil to $67.31. They did say they were going to add $5 to the districts to try and close the equity gap. Just so that you know, Iowa City Community School District is already $17 over the state rate. So that $5 for us won't add any spending authority. It'll just be cash that we receive that will help reduce our tax rate, okay? And so that's kind of how that's designed, as I understand it, from the legislators. One thing that does concern me, however, is that in that same bill, they said that they were going to do away with the backfill of the C&I, the commercial industrial backfill. If you remember, about 3 years ago, all commercial and industrial property tax was taxed at 100% valuation. They ratcheted that down by 5% in 2 consecutive years, so we're at 90% now. But they backfilled that with cash coming back to us so it wouldn't raise our tax rate. Well, I'm told that in this new legislation that they're going to phase that out over a period of 3 years, a third, a third, a third. And so, in essence, that will raise our tax rate now because they won't be backfilling that reduction in our assessed valuation. Here's our state funding realities. I thought it would be good for us to reflect on this for a moment. In 2002 to 2011, they allowed our school budgets to grow by 3.1% on average, but between 12 and 18, that dropped to 1.8%. If we had received the 3.1 during that 12 to 18 time frame, we would have $1,200 more per pupil, which means $17 million in our budget. That's a significant amount of money. And it just points out the compounding effect of not receiving adequate growth each year, the supplemental state aid each year. And it really builds on itself, or it doesn't, as you can see by this slide. I wanted to remind the board of where your money goes, and it's always good that our taxpayers know where our money goes. And because we're a very employee or staff intensive organization to deliver our educational program, 84 cents out of every dollar we spend goes towards a personnel related cost, whether that's their salary or whether that's health insurance or the benefit structure of IPERS and those types of things. So just keep that in mind as we go through this discussion, and you can see that in our budget, roughly $130 million, that $129,500,000 was what we spent last year. And when you break that down, you have about 75% going to our teachers group and another 7% going to our para group. So when you add those together, it's well over 80% of all of our personnel costs are going to the classroom. So I would suggest to you that we have our priorities in the right place. We are an educational institution after all, and that's where we spend our money. It's in the classroom. And so I think you should feel very good about where our money goes. This also gives you a reminder. We provide this to you on a quarterly basis. But this gives you a reminder of how efficient we are compared to comparable schools. I go, because we're the 5th largest, I go 4 up and 5 down. But it's heat mapped, and green means we're efficient, red means we're not. And Iowa City does a really, really good job of providing a value for the dollar spent. And one of the things that's interesting to me, where we rank down at the bottom part of that graph, for instance, many times we get feedback that, we might be administration heavy or spend too much money or something like that. We're actually 330 out of 336 school districts in the state of Iowa. There's only 6 school districts that have a lower cost per pupil than we do in administration. So I would suggest to you that we're very lean in that area. We also have a very economical transportation system where we're 322 out of 336 school districts in the state of Iowa in these particular areas. And so just wanted to share with you that there's a lot of green in this column, and you're giving a good value for the dollar spent for the educational dollar that you take in. So let's look at some of the realities. 1%, if you go clear over to the right-hand side, is going to yield about $2.4 million. Had we received the 3.1%, we would have almost $2 million more in our budget this year if we were back at the average that was in the first part of the decade. So keep that 2.4 million in mind. Now, the board made some decisions last year when they locked up our teacher unit for 2 years and also our paraeducators for 2 years in the negotiation process. But in the meantime, they committed $2.6 million. So before we even started this year, now that we know we get the 1%, we're in a deficit spending position for $235,000, almost $250,000. Then you add to that the IPERS adjustment that we have for this coming year, along with some of the other wage increases that we had. And of course, Liberty High School, as I've mentioned to you on multiple occasions, is going to put extreme budget stress on your general fund budget for at least 3 years. And so we're feeling some of the effects of that this year. In the 19 budget, we feel the vast majority of that, and the 20 budget, those are really your pinch years. We still have these groups of employees at the bottom of the page yet to be determined on what their wage is for 19, and that will just add to that total cost that you see here. So here's the bad news. If you look at the second column over, you'll see that this is our current fiscal 18, and I'm projecting that we're going to be in a deficit position of about $500,000 to $600,000 for this year. But for fiscal year 19, right now, we're running at $2.3 million deficit spending. I don't have to tell you that that worries me a lot. You can see in this column that I've plugged in up here for Christine Grant Elementary. This is a new principal for that role over there. Here's your IPERS adjustment. But I've added nothing in this model for any extracurricular programming. I've not added anything in this model for extra transportation. I've added nothing in this model for any additions to what you currently have in place in our educational program, okay? We need to be very sensitive to these numbers down here, the unspent balance. Mm-hmm. You currently have a superintendent directive in place that requires your superintendent to maintain 5%. We do need to cut this budget, and we'll have to cut that budget in order to help you maintain that superintendent directive. So one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize to you is that this isn't a long-term systemic problem, okay? There is light at the end of the tunnel, but these pink areas through here, 18, 19, 20, maybe even 21 and 22, depending on how aggressively you deal with your budget deficit issues right now, you could work out of those pretty quickly if we do enough cutting this year, okay? Because it always compounds on itself. But these are the pinch years, and we knew they were coming. This isn't a surprise. Opening up Liberty was going to do that to us. But we're right in the middle of that right now. And so we do have some existing challenges in putting together a balanced 19 budget. One of the final things I want to leave you with then, as we leave that particular portion, is that we had promised our taxpayers that we would not raise rates more than 98 cents. And that's how we went out to the public when we were talking to them about this bond referendum. And here's one of the spreadsheets that we showed them, showed the public during this period of time, and how we were going to manage that debt. And so what I wanted to show you is exactly that. So this is a 1% budget, as you can see at the top. And here's the requirements in this column for the amount of money we're going to be asking for from property tax. And over here in this column is the levy rate. And you can see that the total is 97 cents, 98 cents if you round that up. So that's exactly what we told our community we were going to do. And so it's always good to deliver what you promise, and you are delivering what you promised. When you work through this budget, you're not raising those taxes more than 98 cents. So how does that affect a residential taxpayer? Well, if you work that 98 cents through all of the contortions it has to go through with the rollback and assessed valuation on a home valued at $250,000, they're looking at a $7 a month increase in their property taxes from the school district as a result of that bond debt. Now, for a commercial property tax payer, where the rollback is now 90%, you're looking at about a $37 a month adjustment for their commercial property taxes. But the good news is, and this is quite remarkable when you really stop and think about it, we're selling $191 million worth of GO debt, but within 4 budget cycles, we'll have completely eliminated this spike in the property tax, and we'll be back to the exact levy that we have during our current fiscal 18 school year. And so this is really, really good news for our community. They're not having to really live with any kind of an increase in property tax for an extended period of time as a result of this GO debt. All right. So as we finish up, we're asking for about $92 million, or 93 million rounded. Quite a bit of it is controlled, of course, by the voters. Quite a bit of it is controlled by state formula. And you as a board have about a 26% control over that levy rate. Again, here's your timeline that we put all this together. Tonight is the 27th, and you're seeing the preliminary discussion on the budget. We'll come back to you again and make this presentation to you on the 27th of March, and that'll be your superintendent's proposed budget. We'll also publish, and then we'll hold our hearing on the 10th and get it sent out to the state by the 15th. So that's about as quick as I can do it. Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
I will just say, could you add this to the board packet so that we can access the data there? I guess maybe I should be asking Kim.
Yeah, if you can send it to me, Craig, I can sure add it.
Which one do I get? This one?
You tell me.
Okay, next up, AT&T Wireless Services Resolution. We had a public hearing on that earlier.
I move we approve the AT&T wireless service resolution.
Second. Discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Appendix 9, Dwayne?
Thank you. We're going to get through this as quick as we can. There's a lot of items on here, but we're going to focus on 3 schematic design presentations for you this evening. The first one is Southeast Junior High, and we've got, you want to get that up for us? Thank you. We have Dave Harrison here with Design Alliance. He's also the architect that did Coralville Central, so some of you have seen him before. And Michelle Cook, the principal, is also here to address any questions you might have. So we're going to try and get each one of these done as quick as we can, and I'll turn it over to Dave, and then we'll answer questions when he's done. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. It's very good to be here. I'll try to keep this less than 45 minutes or so.
Thanks.
What we're going to talk about is some of the basic program direction that the group established going into this. Very briefly, look at some options we explored, but concentrate upon option D, which is the one that has been chosen to go ahead. So the priorities that we were looking at as we went through the design: air condition the entire school. Some areas are air conditioned now. The food service area is very undersized. The lunchroom is very undersized and inadequate for the people that use it. The band room is small. It needs to be enlarged. And also there's an initiative to create these collaborative suites, which involves 2 classrooms and a science room and some scheduling things that are quite an innovative way for teaching. And also the administration area is way short in terms of both how it functions and also the sizing of some of those parts. As we look at the building, we have 7 different construction projects that have resulted in where the building is now, which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, but it means a lot to us as we try to juggle all these different pieces, these different mechanical systems, different finishes, and to bring the school up to where it needs to be. As I said, we explored 10 different variations. I won't go into all these, but you'll see 1.1s and 4.1s, and then we followed with 5s and 6s, and we went through these with the committee. And the idea that we've come up with that everyone's recommending is the idea number D, and this is the upper floor level. And you can see that we're over in this area is where the existing media center is located. We're proposing to convert that into one of those collaborative classroom areas. We're moving the media center into an area in the courtyard, and this would pick up an axis that now goes by the office, by the entrance, and carries it right on through the media center out into the courtyard. And you'll see that in a minute and a little bit better. Also up here in the northeast, we're creating another collaborative suite on the upper and lower levels here by adding a science room. And here's the other 2 classrooms, and this is the collaborative classroom. We're showing in gray here some future expansion space, and here's some future expansion for the office. Part of this moves some of this administrative function for the office. Here's the existing office. It creates teacher workroom, nurses area, and a counseling suite right across from the existing office, which allows a lot of collaboration between those administrators, but also it's critical to keep the counseling area to have a storefront that kids can feel like they can come in without feeling like they're going to the office. Going down to the lower level, as you know, this is sort of a split level building. Underneath that media center, up above, we would add 3 classrooms. And up here in the northeast wing, another one of those collaborative areas, science room. But this is the existing lunchroom, and this is the existing kitchen area. We're proposing to construct a new kitchen out south of the building, which has a lot of phasing advantages to allow that kitchen to be built while the existing kitchen operates. And then we'd come in during a summer and erase all the existing walls and enlarge the lunchroom. It will go to more of a scramble type of cafeteria situation. Here's an addition to the band room as well that enlarges that. So this is the animation that we've done that shows the design. Here's that new lunchroom or new media center out in the courtyard. And here's the collaborative suite up on the northeast. And you can see how that axis goes right out into the courtyard. And the new band room, the new food service area, and this media center up above with the classrooms down in underneath. So it keeps the character of the courtyard, and it allows this media center to look out It also allows the media center to access that existing patio that's right there as you come in the main entrance door, and really gives that more usefulness. These are sort of the final boiling down of the options, the last 4 options. We really felt that Idea D optimized that media center location and put it in the center of the school, which was important to the school. The food service addition I discussed. It adds 3 classrooms and 1 science room, and it provides 3 of those collaborative suites when we were really only hoping for 2. So it has a lot of advantages there. This is a still rendering of that media center in the courtyard, and that's all we had.
We'll allow Michelle to make any comments you want.
I think, yeah, we took this to, we had a committee first that looked at all 10 we looked at 4 options, we revised, we looked at 4 more, we revised, and then we took 4 options to our entire staff, and they overwhelmingly support Idea D. We feel that it addresses all the needs that we have, just our space needs that are the lunchroom and the band room, but then also just the innovative projects and teaching style that we have going with the blended learning, the collaborative type teaching that we have by opening up those collaborative areas. That's the biggest struggle that our teachers have, is if they want kids to work collaboratively or they're doing blended stations, that their room isn't big enough. So having multiple classrooms be able to open up into this area, almost like a commons, has a lot of advantages and then allows teachers to work together more. So our staff overwhelmingly felt that Idea D satisfied not only our space needs, but also was really innovative for the things that we're trying to do instructionally.
And then I'll add a couple of comments regarding the budget. The budget for this project, the overall budget is $15,586,000. Our current estimate is right at $13 million for the construction part. You know, we still have other pieces we have to fund as well. My goal, personal goal, is to get it to 12.7, so I think we still need to do a little value engineering through design development, but we're certainly close. We've already built in some contingencies, so we're in pretty good shape. So with that, we'd answer any questions you might have.
Just couple quick questions maybe. The kitchen on there, will that kitchen be large enough to be a production kitchen for that side of town, or is it still
I don't think that's the intent for that at all. It's just that kitchen is really undersized for the
Right.
population that's there.
The second question, minor question, the library with the blue roof, is that blue?
That was just we have to have some fun. No, it just illustrates that diagonal, and whether it's a raised roof or a lowered roof or a gently sloped roof with some soffits inside, we haven't worked through those. This was just to express that axis that goes down the main corridor out to the southwest.
No,
Do you like the blue, though?
No, I would prefer red,
Okay.
but I would assume the staff said that as well.
Yeah, I might add that it does cover up that portion of the roof that currently has sod on it. It's been problematic, so this will take care of that. I'd also like to introduce Sarah Houston. She's sitting in the audience. I failed to do that earlier. She's one of the architects of the Design Alliance and worked real hard on Lincoln, the plans. They did that as well, so I want to acknowledge that she's here.
Yeah, I'd prefer a white roof, so it'd be reflective and we might save some on air conditioning, but on the media center, square footage wise, is it gonna be the same or larger than the one that's being replaced?
It's somewhat smaller than the existing media center. We look at guidelines and the template sizes for this type of facility and what those square footages for those different components can be. And in the existing media center now, there's a computer lab, there's some space, and it's really, the existing media center is larger than it really needs to be for the current uses.
Yeah, and as far as the career and technical offerings, with this design, will they expand, will they decrease, what will be provided?
The existing technical area is oversized compared to those same templates. However, we understand that a lot of programs happen in this building and a lot of people come to this this facility to get those technical programs, so we're not changing those technical areas at all. And yes, it will be a white roof. That's
Or
what we
gray.
use.
Well, red and white.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation is North Central Junior High, and we have Vitus Berrien here from SVPA. You may recognize me, he was the lead architect for the Liberty High School, so he's been a pretty good fit at North Central. We also have Colby Miller, who's the principal there, to add his comments and to help with questions. This has been a fun project as well, and I'll let Vitus get right with it.
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We're glad to be working with the district and continuing to make improvements in the North Liberty area. This project is focusing on bringing some additional capacity to North Central. It's currently serving about 550 students, and we're looking at growth up to 800 to 850 students. And so we want to maximize the value of your dollars and being able to increase the capacity of this school. In looking at the site to start, this is a very interesting site. We really kind of focused on some opportunities and limitations. There's a lot of utilities coming into the building on the west side, which we initially studied some options for the gymnasium going to the west side. And the building is really built on a hillside. There's some significant topography on the hill, on the site. As far as the classroom additions, those were master planned with this building in the beginning, and we are staying true to that master plan of adding two-story classrooms on either end of that main front facade. And then, again, we did look at two different options for the gymnasium area, and we'll be showing you the option that was ultimately selected by the group. Just a little bit more on the site. One of the concerns that was brought to our attention is there is some backup traffic that occurs on the roundabout off of Forever Green Road, and there is going to be plans to extend Evergreen Road further to the east. So we want to be thinking about those issues with the increased number of students coming to this building. One of the other items in adding on to the building in current fire code is we are going to need to have a fire lane that extends around the northeast side of the building. So that's highlighted on this diagram in purple. We are looking at an option of adding about 27 parking stalls on the south side of the parent parking. And then one item that we've looked at that's really critical is increasing the stack length to try to get parents coming in off of the roundabout. And the parents are, from my understanding, really following sort of the protocol pretty well in terms of doing a kind of a continuous loop. And so we're really almost doubling the length of that loop to try and get those stacked cars onto the project site and not be a traffic nuisance. So this is just a diagram showing the colored areas or what's being added to the building. We've got some square footages here for you. The total square footage that we're adding to this project is about 30,000 square feet. And that's kind of divided between classrooms. A new gymnasium is another key component of that, as well as fitness, cafeteria expansion. So we'll just kind of go through a little more detail of each of these areas. The strategy with the new gymnasium is to actually stair step it down into the side of the hill. That hill drops off pretty quick. And so we're looking at a scenario where you come in or you have an exit that goes to the west. There's a lot of activities that will still have parents picking up students in sports activities and so forth. It brings that entrance that you're seeing over in this area at the main floor line. And the idea is this gym is set down about 8 feet. So for weekend events and competitions or special community events, you could actually open up both gymnasiums for those types of tournaments or events. And in this case, the bleachers would deploy and allow people to come in at the upper level and go down into the gym.
So the analogy we use is not unlike walking into Carver Hawkeye, where you walk in at the upper level and down onto the bleachers. That's the feel you'll get there. So
yep.
They're all familiar with that.
One of the other features with the gym that we're looking at is to have it be an enhanced structure. At Liberty High, the auxiliary gym had an enhanced structure for some additional storm capacity, so we are looking at that as well here. Fitness area, there was the original program called to replace the wrestling room, and after discussion with staff and Colby, the idea would be to maintain the current wrestling room. It currently does double duty for fitness and wrestling, and rather than sort of switching its purpose halfway through the year, build a new fitness room and let the wrestling room remain as is. Moving down through the cafeteria expansion, this is another key component of the project. We want to enhance the kitchen serving capacity, so there's a fairly significant expansion of the kitchen. We're going to be routing students through 3 service line opportunities and 3 checkout opportunities. They won't have to be weaving in the kitchen. There'll be new walk-in coolers, new kitchen equipment, so that's part of this project. And then we're also increasing the seating capacity up to about 300 students. You know, that may allow them to go to 2 lunches for a period of time, but if they get up to about 800 students, you know, they'll still need to go to 3. But I think we've significantly improved the seating. The other thing that we're looking at is creating a circulation corridor back up towards that gymnasium corridor. So in this larger view, this is kind of the main circulation route for PE activities or access to that new gymnasium. And one other item I forgot to mention, the restrooms located here are for the additional assembly, but it's also going to have great proximity to the outdoor athletic components. I understand that there's some frustration or challenge with restrooms for outdoor events at this facility as well. So this is about as close as we can get to that location.
And that seating along that fire lane corridor next to the lunchroom would be a lot like Liberty, with the raised tables and the stools. Students in groups of 1 or 2 can sit at, and there'll also be some raised tables along the outside windows there. So it'd just be more of a high school feel than it is now.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, again, similar to Liberty, a good portion of this is going to be a 2-story volume. So right now, that's all a sort of a low ceiling below the media center. About half of this expansion is going to be a 2-story volume, so it's not going to feel quite so compressed. Other areas that we're looking at, this is kind of a breakout of the floor plans. On the west side of the first floor, we're adding a new music room, and then on the east side, we're adding some additional restrooms. Right now, there's only 1 restroom core for the whole core, both sides of the classroom wings, and so that's a concern with the added capacity. So we're adding 2 new classrooms. These are a good size classroom. I think one of the feedback was they'd rather have fewer larger classrooms that they have flexibility in how they program than a larger number of smaller classrooms. With that curved design, there's some current challenges with smaller classrooms on the north side of that corridor. Going up to the second floor again, we're focusing on the classroom additions in this area. There is an expansion of about 1,000 square feet for the media center, and we are taking over a current computer lab and repurposing that for more of a tile deployment, technology-intensive classroom with collaboration stations for the students. And then we're reworking some of the existing classrooms to provide more flexibility for the team. We have 2 new science rooms, and then again 2 general education rooms on the east side. And then these are just a little more detail if you have questions on the layout of either the science rooms or the classrooms. And then finally, we'll just kind of highlight the building model. Again, I think we're staying true to the geometry and the look of the original master plan building with the extensions of the classrooms on either side. Up in this area, you're seeing that cafeteria expansion and media center expansion, so there will be some opportunity for some taller window structures. And then the gymnasium area here steps down into the side of the hill. And this is a 3D model looking at the other side of that. Again, this is the fitness area and that new exit or opportunity to get to the west parking lot and the west outdoor activity areas. So I think that's...
Okay, well, that colleague say a few words.
Yeah, very similar to Michelle. Our process as a staff were to, I had all the departments represented. We actually came together before I met with Dwayne and the architects and collected feedback from our staff. And a couple things that came through from the meetings, some reoccurring themes were, one, the need for not necessarily more classrooms, but bigger classrooms. A lot of our teachers are moving to that collaboration style of instruction where they have a lot of blended opportunities and blended learning spaces. So if you look in, if you've been in North Central, the building actually, as you expand down the hallways, the classrooms get smaller because the building curves. And what we have found is some of those classrooms at the very end are so tiny that they're almost becoming unusable. So one of our thought processes was to reconfigure some of those spaces, knock down walls, and make those bigger classrooms. So those learning spaces, we were looking for bigger classrooms. The other thing that came through in the meeting was that we currently share our space with our elementary schools. So for example, on Mondays and Wednesdays, we have our elementary band and orchestra students come to North Central to perform, which then allows our junior high kids not to utilize that space. So the need for another music space, I think, was absolutely necessary, so we can still accommodate our elementary students while still accommodating our junior high students. The other thing to think about also is when we added the gym, currently at North Central, we have high enrollment in our extracurricular activities. So during volleyball, during basketball, we utilize Penn Elementary, we utilize North Liberty Rec, which costs a lot of money when it comes to transportation and getting kids to and from. Now, with the new gymnasium, that's going to allow us to keep our kids in-house, where we can run all of our activities right there at North Central. It also allows us not to have those early morning practices where kids are getting up in the winter when it's dark and it's cold. You know, some parents have a lot of safety concerns with getting their, having their kids come to North Central in the early morning. We can run a lot of our stuff after school right there at North Central.
Thanks, Colby. And for the budget part, the overall budget for this project is $11.1 million. And right now, we're running about 9.4 to 9.5 on the cost of this project. My goal is 9.1. So we have a little work to do, but at this point, we still have that contingency built into it. So I'm feeling pretty good about it that we can get there. And with that, we'd answer any questions you might have.
On the gym, with it being stepped down, and you use the example of walking down into Carver, how is it for ADA accessibility? Because that's a huge problem with Carver.
Yes, we do have an elevator to accommodate that accessibility requirement. There's two separate sets of stairs going down either side, and there is also an elevator. So we are providing accommodations for ADA access, full ADA access to that part of the addition.
On what you're doing.
Yep.
And what's the square footage of the fitness area that, the pie-shaped fitness area?
It's about 1,700 square feet.
Okay.
Let me just double check that. Excuse me, it's 1,980 square feet.
Okay. Very good. And a staff member was talking about the windows on the second floor hallway. I've been in there a few times. I had a hard time picturing it, but they were talking about they were fearful they were going to lose the windows when lockers and things like that went in there. Can you discuss that? Do you understand what you know where I'm coming from?
I do exactly what you're talking about.
So on the second floor, we talked about this square footage right here where the cursor is, and the decision was ultimately made to maintain this area as a part of the corridor extension, to have daylighting at the end of the corridor as they do today, and to provide lockers on either side of that. So there was some discussion about trying to capture that space back for classroom area, and ultimately we decided to maintain it for lockers, natural lighting, and the extension of that
Right.
corridor.
Well, the staff member is making a big push for ambient lighting, natural lighting, that way. And if again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but as far as career and technical offerings, are there any expansions with this?
There are not, but this facility has some outstanding facilities for that. This was actually one of the facilities we toured when designing Liberty for some of the career and tech spaces, and I think they're getting well utilized, they're well laid out, and we didn't hear any concerns with their current performance or function.
You might back up a little and talk about the light monitors that we're providing too.
Yeah, this building has a couple of light monitors that run down either side, and so on the north side, in the science rooms and the classrooms, we're continuing that light monitor, and maybe it's probably easiest to see in the massing model. So those light monitors are running down in through here. We are not continuing that down on the one classroom on either on the front side, just based on the compounding curve in that area. But there is, this is one of the facilities in the district that really does have outstanding daylighting in the classrooms, and we're trying to basically continue forward with that same model.
Anything else? No? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vita. Colby? All right, our next one is Tate High School. This is an exciting project as well, and our architect this evening is Will Downing, and he's probably familiar to you by now because he worked on Longfellow and Mann. and we thought he was a pretty good fit for this project. And Ann Browning is here, the principal as well. So I'll turn it over to them and
Okay,
move right along.
thanks. Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for giving my firm the opportunity to work on this project, continue our relationship with the school district. And thanks to the principal for working with us. It's been great working with Principal Browning and staff so far, and we're looking forward to more involvement with the students coming up as we continue to develop the design. The program for this project is fairly straightforward. We're looking at a classroom addition and gymnasium addition. We've also looked at some minor renovations within the building to support some changes in the curriculum that they're looking forward to. I assume there's a down arrow. Okay. So if you're not familiar with the Tate site, it's a fairly compact site on a long mall drive. So the building and parking occupy the majority of the site. It was planned for expansion to the east there off the classroom wing. There's some opportunity for expansion here to the south. But there's also this large geothermal ground source heat well field that we have to work around. It's something we want to avoid changing in the future with the addition. So taking the steps with classroom addition, looking at a couple of options at this stage to extend the classroom wing, really just repeating the module of classrooms to the east, and then the gymnasium to the south. And one of the early comments we received from staff was that what they have now in the commons and the libraries is a lot of natural light facing towards the south. So we were looking at minimizing our impact on that when we create this new space. So moving the gym to the south, the grade drops off about 4 feet. So we have an opportunity to lower the new gymnasium building, which is necessarily going to be taller than the existing building, and then creating this link here that can maintain some of the windows and natural light and actually come in underneath the windows that are in the library. So we really won't affect the library daylight at all. And then with that grade change, this link also provides an opportunity to create an informal presentation space for the students in the building really an amphitheater feeling. So you can see the ramp down here for direct access to the gymnasium. Then also some amphitheater-style seating facing a platform stage for our students. And then necessary mechanical spaces, and then restrooms to serve the gym. Or as I said, classrooms to the east. Looking at creating some home economics education space within an existing classroom. And also taking really a little used fourth exit from the building and converting that into a computer classroom for students to sit down and do some concentrated work in computers. And then a minor change to the front entry vestibule so that during the business day, the students, any visitors would then be directed directly into the office rather than into the school at large. So then a little bit of expansion, hopefully to 2 additional classrooms in addition, and then a fitness room also connected to the gymnasium. So expanding the PE opportunities for the students. And zooming in on the plan a little bit.
What you see there is the geothermal well field that we need to avoid with the structures, all those.
Yeah, all those little dots are our vertical wells. There's an existing outdoor basketball area that we're going to maintain. But then connected to this stage, which is really an expansion of the commons area, an outdoor patio. We only have some patio area, but it's a great opportunity to expand that. And then the intention is that for the windows on either side of that to be, or the walls on either side of that to be glass. So again, for more daylighting through there. And looking at that expanded option in detail. And finally, some views. So you can see the main body of the existing building with this large light monitor over the commons and library area, and really recalling that form on the gymnasium addition to the south. So again, the rhythm of the building is really recalling. And this is showing that fitness room here with some windows. And turning a little bit, you can see the transparency of the link structure with the amphitheater seating. And finally, on the left is the classroom addition, which is intended to be really an extension of the existing classrooms to maintain the look, appearance, organization of the building.
All right, with
That
that
was
one,
it.
And then the doors or something, but.
Oh, yeah. There are doors on the, yes, the south side of the building. These wings have doors so students can go directly outside. We'll look at adding doors on the north side as well.
okay, I'll let you have a few words in, you can be sure.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So I brought Christina Brown with me, our guidance counselor, who does a great job of trying to schedule all the classes. Okay, sorry. To schedule all the classrooms. She's like a magician when she figures that out. So just looking at the plans, options A and B, of course, our staff was really hoping for an additional, we were approved for 2 classrooms and a gymnasium. And we're very excited about the opportunity of possibly 2 more, so the 4 classrooms and the fitness room, because we could really use the size. We're teaching a government class out of a small conference room, and we currently have home ec in the cafeteria. And in the library houses 3 different classrooms, Edgenuity, academic supports, and media library supports and credit recovery. And then our science room, which is really relatively small, we only have 1, so we have up to 25 students in that class, and it's very small. So, you know, we're just thrilled for the opportunity to have this expansion. And I just love the fact that there's a fitness room, so a lot of our students with anxiety and depression could go down there and exercise, and we have a lot of students who are anxious to exercise in front of others, and the fitness room provides for that as well. And then the gymnasium will be super nice. And let me see, I'm just trying to think what else. But of course, we're just thrilled. It's a beautiful design. We really appreciate, they really took our input. And the amphitheater to seating right off the cafeteria will also expand the cafeteria area. They can sit there, and then even today we are out enjoying our patio and expanding, you know, sitting out there. So he also took that into consideration, and so we will still have our patio and our outdoor area, our garden area, and home ec. So anything else, Christina, that I forgot? Okay.
All right.
Okay. We'll show the last slide.
Thank you. Oh, you have
Last
one more?
Yeah. Just
There you
the
go.
Overall view. So
Oh,
you can
yeah.
see the
Sorry, I missed
organization.
that. When we first met with Ann, she wanted a 2-story addition and about 8 classrooms. So we've had to work really hard to get it down to what we have, right?
That's true.
They even had it all drawn out for us. One of their staff members was a draftsman, and they had it all planned when we got there. I go, well, I don't know if we can afford that. Here's what we can afford. So the budget is $3,528,000 for the project, and right now our estimates are running from 2.7 to 3.1 for those 2 options that you're looking at. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. And when we get into design development, we'll see if we can afford those 2 extra classrooms. We'll certainly try. Okay? With that, we'll answer any questions you might have.
I just have one quick question. Is the only entrance then to get to the gym through the main entrance?
There would be additional exits
Will you
to.
show with your cursor?
Yeah, to the south as well, directly outside.
Okay.
Off
And that's
the
like
parking lot.
ground level, so you could
Yep.
just, okay.
Yep, right off grade.
And the home ec room, I know at one point in time, there were some discussions about a culinary kitchen at Tate years ago. Are we approaching something like that with this home ec room, or is it just going to be a basic stove and washing machine, or what all is going to be involved in there?
We're picturing 2 kitchenettes in there, similar to the other high schools, but we still have the industrial kitchen in the cafeteria where they serve lunch. But it's hard to have schedule home ec out of there with the lunch
Sure.
over 3 periods. So we'd still have the option of the major kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you could go back to one of the presentations that kind of has the total overhead view with the additional classrooms going off the one end. Yeah. My only concern on this one is that when you come out further here and you're blocked off here, and I don't know that the rendering here will show very much, but when you have activity here in the evening on those basketball courts, it really can't be observed. But from a security standpoint, but
Well, if you're coming from the west or from the north, you're absolutely right. You can see them from the south, you'd have to look through the.
well, you gotta look through a chain link fence and a parking lot and a building.
Right. Okay, well, we'll look at that.
I have a general question that actually came up when I was looking at North Central's, and then again, I guess with this one, as we add on, fairly significant square footage to some of these, is there an additional like tax on those geothermal wells? Like, do we have to add on to that, or how does that affect that part?
Yes, we are adding additional vertical wells to supplement the available heat.
And I think at North Central, actually, we're gonna use rooftop.
North Central, the classrooms are being served from the geothermal system, and the gymnasium will have a standalone system. And for that volume of space, we think that makes the most sense. And
Okay.
it was planned for those classroom additions, so there's capacity there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Couple just housekeeping things. There's a lot on the agenda there, so I'll just mention the topics, and if you have any questions, I'll answer. There's a change request for the Culinary Arts Kitchen. There's an awarded bid for the City High wall project that we put off from a year ago. We think we got a good price. There's more included in the scope than there was last year, and a better price. And then we have some step 9s and 10s for Hills, Corville Central, and North Central. Those storage buildings are done, punch lists are done, retainage can be released. And then also in your admin content folders, we try to get you Grant, Lincoln, and Mann Elementary. I don't know how many of those will come up, but those are construction documents, so we're ready to go out the door and get bids on them. And then there's a change request at West High for some unforeseen, due to the demolition we've been doing out there for plumbing, electrical, and HVAC. So with that, I'd answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Dwayne, I'm wondering about the grant and the second music room.
Yes, we got it in.
Is that what the instrumental music is?
Actually, where we put it was down in the pre-K, or not pre-K, but the 1, 2, 3 wing on the lower level.
Okay.
We actually, part of that, I don't know, maybe we can pull that up, but if you look at the drawings on the far north end of the building, on the lower level, there were some areas that were unexcavated. We actually recaptured some of that and put a window at the very end with windows. So we got a room that can be used for art or music for the lower level grades.
Great, thank you.
We did get it in.
Thank you.
Apologize
Yeah,
for
when I
not-
looked at it, I couldn't see it, but that's probably because it was on the lower level.
Yeah,
and I
we got it in.
wasn't seeing both of them at the same time. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
without a lot of heartburn, it worked.
Thank you.
Other questions on Appendix 9? Is there a motion to approve?
Move that we approve Appendix 9 requests as, and project as presented.
Second that?
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Sorry. Yay.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Thank you. We have one item removed from consent agenda, item 8.
Yeah, so I pulled that. I just was curious about the change in funding for the Liberty Phase 2 project being switched to SAVE funding from GEO bond funds.
Yeah, that was a mistake on mine. It should have been GEO bond.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
I'm so used to putting save that I just put it in a cover letter. It should have been GEO.
Okay.
And we're going to pay for some of it out of PEPL as well, as much as we can, so that, because we don't really know where that project is completely yet as far as all the equipment, but that's where we hope to take it out of.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. So I move that we approve the Liberty Scoreboard item with GEO bond funding. And I think there's a City High thing in there with PEPAL funding, so I'll just include that.
Second.
Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm a yes. I'm not getting them.
Yeah. Lori?
You know what, my computer's thinking.
Didn't show up on mine.
I think it's trick because I don't know. Yay.
There we go.
There it is.
Yeah, we all had a little issue there.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Rotland, Ressler, Godwin, Clausen, Malone, and Eystone voting yea, and Director Hemingway voting nay.
Okay, agenda setting for the March 27th board meeting. In terms of board work, legislative update, negotiations update, we'll have an equity committee update. I'm not sure if that's where we'd also have the operations committee update from the work that team is doing. We'll have a discussion on student potential analysis, which we just received yesterday, any implications for FMP. We'll have the budget discussion that Craig prepped us on earlier, PEPAL life cycle budget, and of course, Appendix 9. Were there any other things that we felt needed to be on the full board agenda next board meeting?
Yeah, this, I don't know if we can have a discussion on, a further discussion on the situation with this one class, expand that a little bit. I don't know if that would be beneficial.
I mean, from a
That's
timing
something-
standpoint,
well,
we're beyond.
Right, I agree, but, and I don't know if that's something that would be better just to put on a work session and, you know, hash it out that way, or how we go about it. But you know, it was kind of a situation I think we can learn from, and having a discussion on it would be beneficial. Where I would.
I think that we could look at, you know, a future like education committee where we talk about the process and, you know, talk about minimum numbers of students required for class and that types of stuff,
Sure.
and how we go about deciding when we are going to, you know, pull an offering, and how we communicate, all that stuff that's around that might be a good discussion at ed committee at some point.
We're kind of full for ed committee.
I know it's going to, time-wise for this, obviously, it's past time, so
Like I say, I
a work
just
session
would
or-
defer to that, but I think it's worth revisiting it sometime and having a discussion on that as an example of something to avoid.
Yep, learning from our process, that's good, I agree, Phil.
So I'd like to add the transportation item that we're going to be discussing in work session tonight in case we would like to take any action, in case we're ready to do that.
I think that's fair, that's good.
And then also our community members asked about the soccer
Foundation.
lights discussion. I'm wondering where that should fall. Should that go to operations? Or where should that discussion happen?
I had that
Well-
question to the Mearden Soccer Foundation work.
Well, Dwayne, that's something you'll be working on, right? Is the lights at City High for the soccer?
Yeah, as the community speakers mentioned, we had a very productive meeting, and Terry and I are going to keep working with them, and they have to meet certain criteria for engineering and for permitting and licensing, and we've got all that started. Plus, we're going to come to you with a formal gift and a contract and an agreement with the district to funding and who does what. So
Yeah. And that would come back like an Appendix 9 type of approval then?
I think the gift probably might be a standalone item.
It'll be a standalone item. Your board policy requires you accept a gift like that, so.
But it's nothing that we would have to address outside of a regular board meeting?
No.
They're optimistic for March. I'm thinking it's going to be more like April.
Good to know, thanks.
Any other items for the March 27th full board meeting? We have a work session slotted for that night. Again, we are discussing attendance area development. We just are having a standing item on that. Any other work session items?
Well, I do have a question, I guess. It's 9:30, and we talked about having a debriefing about what we talked about today with that class, and we have a pretty full work session. Is there any desire or chance that we could just move tonight's work session to March 6th after the operations committee? I mean, we keep adding, we want to add on to our work sessions and add on to our work sessions, but we're not getting through our work sessions.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Well, the only thing with that is or so if we, it's just at the operations committee, it's the three of us, and then you're saying that at a certain time we fire up a work session and then.
Well, originally you were going to be done by 6 because there was going to be a policy and governance committee meeting, but we canceled that. So, originally there was going to be 3 more of us coming in at 6 o'clock. So
Personally, I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, we're past the time when you should have had an agenda, but we have the agenda technically, right? If we don't do it, we'd post the agenda. Was supposed to be posted, tomorrow? So we still have 1 day to do it and be under our guidelines.
I'm okay with it. I'm out of town that week and would not be able to participate, but as long as we have a quorum, I'm good with it.
I don't know that I can participate either that night, so I have a conflict that evening. I just can't commit to it at this point.
So that's still a quorum. If 2 of us are missing, I think maybe in the interest of continuing to move our agenda items forward, I think it's a good idea if other board members are willing to do a work session on March 6th.
I'm certainly
It does
more.
involve more than just us, though.
Right.
So
True.
we probably should check with the other folks in the room.
I have them book every Tuesday night, so I think we can make that work.
Well, I mean, we can keep adding on to our work sessions and.
I can make March 6th work.
It works for me. I don't like the idea of us trying, this late at night to ram stuff through and not really having a full discussion. So I'd be all in favor of having something that we would be starting earlier and giving it the time. So I'm okay with March 6th. I'd love to have everybody there, but I think that at least having the beginnings of the discussions, because I think most of the topics are not something we're going to be done with after one work session either. So you guys will definitely get caught up and.
No, I think, I'd go along with that. And so if we're starting at 4:30, the operations goes to 6, then we'd have a work session we can put a time limit on that, or are we going to have it go till 10? Are we going to go just 2 hours?
You guys can't be done like 5 with your operations committee?
Yeah, we have light topics on that first one, the playground and safety, so I'm sure we'll plow through that.
Yeah, I would say 6 to 8, 2 hours.
Okay,
would be-
yeah, I wouldn't have any problem doing that.
So we're taking the work session that was scheduled tonight and moving it to March 6th. That's fantastic, from 6 to 8.
I do wonder, though, if neither of us are going to be there, should we have just the attendance discussion that we were going to have? If we're not going to be there
I
next
think
week.
if Steve is there or Amy is there, I think they can give an update of what we talked about.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that?
It's yeah.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I think that.
We can certainly start the conversation.
Yeah.
If we got to come back to it, we at least have, it's underway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're probably not going to finish that conversation in that work session.
Agreed.
And it's better, that one especially, I think we need to be fresher and on our game a little more, because
For the logistics standpoint, if our president and vice president aren't there, do we need to figure out who's going to run that meeting now, or just do it at the time?
I can probably be present for part of the meeting. I just can't commit to being there the whole night, so it would be good to have somebody there or somebody plan to.
I mean, do we need to figure that out, or
We
just
can deal with
do
that.
it?
Yeah, it's just.
It's a work session,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I don't know, we tend to go off the rails, and somebody needs to
I would
rein us
defer
in
to Sean.
sometimes.
Sean's going to be running operations, so if anyone doesn't
I'll
have any
back
problem,
you up, Sean.
Sean,
All
I
right.
think could handle the work session just as well.
Somebody's got to rein us in sometimes.
Full
That's all I'm
faith in
saying.
his.
if I need to use my teacher voice,
All right, there you
We got a
go.
president, we got a former vice president, we're okay.
I think you're
We're all
good.
good.
Okay, so then the last thing for March 27th is we have the closed session on the superintendent evaluation. That's with board members to go through the feedback that we received to prepare the evaluation that would be presented subsequently. So, there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The floor is-